Okay, we're going to begin our city council meeting. As a reminder, if you'd like to speak before the council tonight, please complete a blue speaker request form and give it to the clerk prior to the item. And just as this is my first time presiding, and I've told my colleagues I am not good at formalities and memorizing scripts, so just bear with my accidents tonight. So I'm sure I'll be corrected many times. Or I'm sure, right, Erica? All right, Mark, would you like to please call the roll?
Councilmember Yao?
Here.
Councilmember Lorimore? Here. Councilmember Tessari?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Here.
Mayor Rigby is absent.
So tonight's invocation will be presented by Elder John Alexander with Calvary Eastville.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members and the panel. I'd like to thank you all for giving me this time and this privilege. It's an honor to come before you and start your meeting. Let's go ahead and take a moment of just lifting up our needs. Father God, we just come before you, Lord, just to thank you, Lord, for this time you've given us, Lord, this evening, Lord, as we just present the board members to you, to the public here, to the community, Lord God. Thank you for each one of them, Lord, for their leadership, Lord, and for their example, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you would just continue to give them vision for this great city, Lord. And may they just continue just to beautify and to make their decisions based on agreement and based on what's best for the community, Lord. And just being an example for us, Lord God. And I lift up the first responders as well, Lord God, the police department, the fire department, and all those that are involved with the first response, Lord God, that you would just protect them, watch over them, protect them, Lord, especially in this time now, Lord, of the fire season that's just beginning, Lord, that you would be with the firemen, Lord, and be with their families as well, Lord God, as they are out on call, Lord, and in dangerous situations, Lord, that their families would just be just comforted, Lord, by their duties, Lord God, and just for just at the community itself, Lord God, just the things that are taking place, the projects, the buildings, the river enhancement, or the road enhancements, just things that are taking place throughout the city, Lord, that you would bless it, Lord, that knowing, Lord God, this is for the good for the public and for the community, Lord, here in Eastvale, Lord God, and also for the children that represent in the city. And as I saw the little Girl Scouts here, Lord God, they be returning back to school, Lord God. I pray for them, Lord God, you would protect them, watch over them, Lord, as they be starting school real soon here, Lord, that they would find a safe place in their schools and their just for the teachers as well and the staff, Lord, that they would just watch over them, protect them, Lord God, as if it was their own, Lord God. And then, again, lift up the people of this community, Lord, for all of them that might be just struggling, Lord, with anything, Lord, that you would just provide for them, Lord. Maybe financially, maybe just their health, maybe just, their emotions, Lord. Those that might be just going through a time of depression, Lord, I just pray, Lord, that you would just provide the needs for them, Lord God. So again, Lord, we lift up this night, this evening, this agenda for you, Lord God, that everything would just go smooth tonight. And we just thank you and love you in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder, for those kind words. So we have actually some special guests tonight that's going to be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which is Girl Scout Troop 1160. So you guys can come up to the front and we can get them a microphone. They can lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Who wants to hold the mic?
Good evening, everyone. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you for that. We always appreciate our guests doing that, so thank you so much. We will now move to item 3, additions and revisions. The council may only add an item to the agenda after making a finding that there is a need to take immediate action on the item and that the item came to the attention of the agency subsequent to the posting of the agenda. An action adding an item to the agenda requires a majority vote of the council. Mark, is there any staff members have requested to add an item?
There are no changes.
Okay, council members would like to add any particular item? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'd like to solicit a motion and a second.
So I move.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore,
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari, Mayor Pro Tem Plot.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. And we'll now be moving to item number 4, presentations and announcements. And will be an update. Is Dennis Green out there? Or there you are. He was on the I-15 Lyman Exchange and the Highway 60 rehabilitation project as well. It has it on there, not to throw you a curveball, but
Not a problem. I can hit a curveball. I
There
play
you go.
baseball. I
There
was
you
home
go.
run king.
there you go.
All right, thank you so much for being here. Let's go with Limonite, the good news first. It will be sweet when it's complete, and we're getting closer to the sweet time. We made our major traffic switch today, one of the last ones that we had to do. If you drove out there today, there's a few hiccups that I saw. I'll be talking to them in the morning about those. The other thing, we only have one more major closure coming up to remove the false work, the temporary support structure on the new bridge, which will have a full nighttime freeway closure to do that. We'll coordinate that with all of the other work that's going on and get it all done at the same time. The last report I saw from the contractor, we had completed almost 63% of the work in only 58% of the time. We are almost 5% ahead of goal on this project with the projection of having traffic on that bridge before Thanksgiving. That I'm told that we will be able to do. We'll have that bridge open and fully operational. Incidental work to continue with landscaping may go into the start of the year, which was added to the project, but we are ahead of schedule, projecting to be done as of yesterday, well ahead of Thanksgiving, having that full bridge open. If we don't have any bad rains or anything happens, we're gonna do it for this community. So that's the great news I'm here to tell you tonight. If you see anything else, give us a call. Last time I was here, I had some concerns about signals. I took care of that. I talked to the gentleman. But a couple things I noticed this evening, I'll be talking to him tomorrow morning about. So any questions on Limonite?
No, just a comment. Just wanted to commend, there was a ton of rain that we had over the winter.
Oh,
that
yes.
just for exorbitant amount of time, and the fact that you're still on schedule to get it in before the holidays is huge.
Yeah,
So,
Now, I don't want to
thank you.
correct you, but we're ahead of schedule.
I know. There you go. There you go. There you go.
So we are ahead of schedule, and because of the innovation of the contractor, normally the false work installation takes one night for each direction. He was able to do it in one night for both directions. We did some innovative things out there with coordination and planning that I had never seen before in my whole 30-some-year career in construction, where you put it all up in one night. This contractor's performed greatly for this community with the understanding we need to get off this road. So that's what we're doing right now. The swarm, it's here. This is the first weekend of tests to see the contractor's ability, how much work he can get done with a weekend closure. This will be the first weekend. We're monitoring it. And the radios, you cannot drive anywhere in the Inland Empire without hearing the radio announcements. We went to the truck stops today. We've got them on board. We've had meetings with 5 cities. We're going to continue the communication, the coordination. I've got some ideas from some of your staff today that might help during the event that you're hosting in August. There was some good ideas, input that I received earlier today, and I'm going to follow up with that, and maybe we can take some of the sting out of the swarm for your events that are coming up in August. So I'm looking forward to doing that, but we have to fix the road. If you notice the trucks, they don't drive in their lanes because of the broken concrete. They're all over the road. If you're a truck driver, you understand what those lanes do to you when you're driving a big rig. So we're going to build it, but there's so much work coming that it's unheard of what SB1 is going to pump out in the Inland Empire. The good advantage, and I'm done, is what's happening. If I get this work done like we're planning these closures before Thanksgiving, all of this money is being pumped into the Inland Empire, and you should have a knockout retail system. Nobody should be broke with all of the construction work, and 90% of the crews working on the swarm for the concrete slab are local people hired by Jay McLaughlin to pump the money back into the communities so that we make up during the holiday shopping season. The money should be put back into the communities that they're earning right now with all of this work. So that's what's going on right now. Anything else?
I know the city council and the employees, we all know about the swarm, but just in case there's someone out there in the public who does not know about this, do you mind just giving a brief overview of what's happening and how it's going to affect this region?
All right, what's happening is the 60 State Route 60 is under construction. I might as well just tell you. It starts out with 3 bridges that are being replaced in the Ontario and Chino Hills area that are being hit by trucks all of the time. They're going to replace those 3 bridges. I believe it's Benson Pipeline and Monte Vista, if I got the names right. We're replacing them to give more clearance on the freeway so that the oversized loads don't hit those, and you keep more oversized loads on the freeway instead of sending them through your communities with permits. Caltrans is trying to keep them on the freeway. Then we're replacing all of the concrete from Route 83, Euclid Avenue, all the way into Riverside to the 6091 215 interchange. Now, in order to do that, I'm an ex-road worker. So let me use the mayor and you too, if I could, real quick. So the mayor's the middle lane. You two are the outside lanes in the 3-lane section. How do I work in the middle lane and have you driving on both sides of me? You can't. I'm gonna have a 2-foot hole, 2-foot deep hole in the middle, so I must close the entire freeway. Because I need a lane to bring the concrete in and the equipment, and then I need a buffer, and then the carpool lane is gonna be kept open for emergency responders. So for 15 weekends, we're gonna start this Friday night, 10 o'clock, closing the eastbound, the entire stretch from on the 60, from the 15 to the 6091 215 in Riverside. We're looking at 8 weekend closures. When we finish that, we're looking at about September. We'll turn around, we'll go westbound with the same operation. When we get all of that done, then we'll do the rest of the work under regular lane closures at night, avoiding peak traffic hours. That's what we're doing, replacing all of the bad concrete. Want to know more about 60? I can tell you. Okay, any other questions?
So the 60, I think I've also experienced this on the 10.
Yes, it's coming.
Yes, but I'm hoping that you guys avoid this, and there's a personal request. My tires are those low profile tires, and sometimes driving in the lanes, I think it's on the 10, get caught in a groove
Yep,
at where they laid the concrete, and my car catches on, and I have to
just so
jump
you
back
know.
too. That's
buddy.
not going to happen on the 60, right?
It's going, no, it won't. This will be new concrete. The 10 is going to go under construction about the end of this year from the Los Angeles County line into Ontario area, and then ultimately it's going all the way to the Arizona state line, replacing the concrete. We're on Redland, in Redlands area now. It's going to pick up from Redlands, go to Beaumont to 111, from 111 all the way to the state line. Next year, all of this is going to be under construction, the 10 also. Get ready, it's coming. Because of SB1 funds pumped into the Inland Empire to fix the infrastructure. So the 10 will be under construction, and then the carpool lane, the express lane, is going to be taken all the way up to Hesperia by SBCTA. The agencies are working together. You're going to see work everywhere. So then it's important that we collaborate, cooperate, and communicate. And I'll be helping on most of those projects.
So one other question. I'm very appreciative that you're helping on both projects, overseeing, being part of the communication for that, both for Limonite and the 60. So, and I know you had touched on it briefly about the large event that we're going to be having here
Yes.
in Eastvale. That is being taken into consideration then?
Here's what I can tell you right now. I had some input before this meeting started from some of your staff. They're going to follow up with an email to me tomorrow of some ways I think we can take some of the sting out of it. And I'm pretty confident I can sell most of it to Caltrans. That's all I'm at liberty to say right now.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Thank you for taking the time and, always educating us on what's going on with the project, so we appreciate it.
Appreciate coming here. Great staff to work with, and we'll just keep going until we get it all done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move. That was the first mistake right there. Too soon. So now we'll move to item 4.2, our recognition of our building official, Tim Steenson, and also if my colleagues can join me up at the podium as well.
So the city of Eastville is pleased to recognize Tim Steenson for his time as building official for the city of Eastville from October 2012 to July of 2019. Mr. Steenson worked in the tract home building industry for 14 years before becoming a building inspector. He was a building inspector for 9 years for the federal government, City of Corona, and San Bernardino County before becoming a building official. Mr. Steenson has been a building official for 27 years and has worked for the cities of Calabasas, City of Banning, and the greatest city of Eastville. I would like to thank Tim for his commitment to the city of Eastville and wish him the best in his next venture. If you didn't do the math with all those years that we just added up, he's got over a 50-year career in the building profession, and so and he'd like to spend some time with his grandkids, and so and we don't blame him. So we're gonna dearly miss Tim. Yeah, there they are, right over there.
There you go.
Your grandpa is a pretty special guy, and he's built a lot of buildings and inspected a lot of buildings for health and safety and throughout our community, and helped to really create Eastville into a great city. And so you should be very proud of your grandpa. And so, but thank you very much, Tim, and we're excited for your next chapter.
We appreciate the comments. I'll just like to say one thing. Outside of all the work that Tim has done, what you don't see maybe at City Hall is he's always around with a smile, always happy. His colleagues love working with him, and so it's always indicative of the type of environment we like to create at City Hall. We appreciate everything you do outside in the work in the roads, but also just at City Hall and just being a good presence with everyone else here as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this honor, and I appreciate the opportunity to have served Eastvale for 7 years. I got some opportunities that few building officials get. I got to build 2 Amazon distribution centers. There's only about a handful of building officials that have built any Amazon distribution centers, and I got to build 2. So that was a high point in my career. I came here after 20 years of being a building official, and I got to build some amazing things here just because it's Eastvale. Eastvale is a great place. I really appreciate having served here and having experienced the growth of the city and the maturation of the city. And I appreciate having had a very supportive council, city manager, and a great staff, and a great family that has supported me for almost 50 years of working. So it's a great honor, and it'll get a special place in my office at home.
Thank you.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Sure. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you.
All right, we will now move to item 4.3, which is the introduction of new city employees, Accounting Manager Amanda Wells and Management Analyst Miguel Ramirez Cornejo. Brian, would you like to make the introductions?
You just did a great job. No.
Hey, I'm already in good rhythm right now. I'm in good rhythm. Don't throw me off.
Amanda comes to Eastville from the city of Rialto, where she worked for 14 years in the city's finance department. Over the years, she worked in all finance divisions, including utility billing, utility user tax, accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from California State University, San Bernardino, and an enrollment in the Master's in Public Administration program at the CSU-SB. Amanda and her husband Jeremy have been Eastville residents since 2010. In her spare time, which she won't have anymore, Amanda enjoys gardening, swimming, and tinkering in the garage. And Miguel's 16-year profession career started in the banking, where he spent 14 years in working throughout Southern California as a branch manager and trainer. Miguel entered the public service in 2017 as a management analyst for the City of Moreno Valley Economic Development Department. He earned a BA in Business Administration from CBU and is currently working on his Master's of Organizational Leadership at CBU, where he is expected to graduate next spring. Miguel and his wife Rebecca live in Riverside, where they are raising 2 children. As a family, they enjoy road trips and being outdoors. Miguel is a road and mountain cyclist and is currently training for a 100-mile bike ride in the fall. Amanda and Miguel. And we want to take a picture with you
Let's
guys.
have you guys come up here too if we can.
And just so you know, because the city council was one of the first cities in the state of California to have their budget adopted this year, we were able to go out and recruit and get the best and the brightest to come to Eastvale. So that we got out in front of everybody else that was going out for.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We do one at a time. Amanda and Ruby. Whoever wants to go first. Okay, and 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Great job, Anissa.
All right, we will now move to item 4.4, which would be an update by Eastvale Public Library Branch Manager Felicia Chen.
Good evening, your mayor and city council members. First, we had an exciting program in July. There was an open house literacy program on July 10th. The Riverside County Library System is restarting a tutoring program for individuals who live in the area and are looking for tutoring opportunities. Patrons who become a volunteer literacy tutor can tutor at any RCLS library. The program will match tutors and students who live near each other for their convenience. They will train tutors before they match with students, and the hosts in charge of this program will also be available to assist whenever tutors need help. We are hoping that this is a continuous and successful program. To learn more about this program, please contact the library. As a reminder, the library has a zipbook program available for patrons. Patrons should take advantage of this great opportunity to request items that they'd like to see added into the collection. There are some restrictions with requesting these items. However, the item has to be available on Amazon Prime. It has to already be published at least 6 months ago and not a bestseller, and cannot be more than $50. For more information, please go to our website at rivlib.net. And lastly, the summer reading program is still going on strong. To date, we've had a total of 281 children and 64 teens and adults sign up. There's still plenty of more prizes left to claim. The absolute last day to claim any prizes is August 10th. Were there any questions?
So for the reading program, does Audible count towards that?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really? I was joking. Okay, cool. I'm gonna sign up
Anything to
then.
get the patrons to be coming at the library and reading.
Wow, all right, excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. We would actually, normally we'd move to the number 5, the student liaison report, but there is no update for that. So we will go to item number 6, public comments. Any member of the public may address the council on items within the council's subject matter jurisdiction, but which are not listed on this agenda during public comments. However, no action may be taken on matters that are not part of the posted agenda. We request comments made on the agenda to be made at the time the item is considered, and that comments be limited to 3 minutes per person. Please address your comments to the council as a whole and do not engage in dialogue with individual council members, city staff, or members of the audience. Mark, has there been anybody that's have pulled in a public card?
Yes, we have one comment card from Thomas Rife.
Good evening, Council. My name is Thomas Rife, and I would like to discuss a few things with you this evening. First, the Eastvale Service Club will be holding a street cleanup event this Saturday, July 27th. We will meet at the entrance to Riverwalk Park on Harrison and Chandler and pick up trash from there to Archibald. The event begins at 9 o'clock a.m., and it usually takes us about an hour to complete. If you know someone that needs service hours or just wants to keep our city looking good, please invite them to come. I'd also like to let everyone know about an upcoming event put on by the Kiwanis Club of Eastvale. They are holding a summer mixer on August 24th from 6 to 9. The Eastvale Symphony Orchestra will be performing, and they also have a Beijing opera performance. The event will be held at the Bootsma Ranch. Refreshments will be served, and the net proceeds will go towards the ERHS Key Club scholarships. Tickets are $15 each, and if anyone is interested, please see Mr. Bootsma to learn more or purchase tickets. Finally, as you all know, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Eleanor Roosevelt FBLA team that competed for a national title in San Antonio earlier this month. We finished third in the nation and had a great time attending conferences and meeting people all over the country and world. For the convention, every state and country made a unique pin for their members to wear in trade. The California pin was very popular, and I was lucky enough to get a few home to Eastvale. I'd love to present you all and thank you for all your support in sharing our story on social media. So, Mr. Jones, would you like to hand these out?
It's very kind of you. Thank you. That's awesome. Man, that is so cool. Hey, Thomas, real quick, I apologize for not understanding the acronym, but what is FBLA? What does that acronym stand for?
That stands for Future Business Leaders of America.
Thank you. Great job.
Thomas, before you go. Yeah. So how many teams were competing again?
In our division, there was about 20.
20. And so you made third in the entire U.S., your team. And what was the project about again?
We did digital video production on a day called Giving Tuesday, which is all about giving to organizations in your community. So we had to make a video promoting that and then give a presentation all about what we did.
Awesome. Great job.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Great job, Thomas.
And
Much
thank you.
appreciate it. Way to represent the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we will now move to item number 7, the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are to be approved with one motion unless a council member, staff member, or a member of the public requests separate action on a specific item. Mark, is any staff member, any Eastville staff member or any members of the public have requested to pull any items?
No, we have nothing to request.
Okay. Any colleagues want to request pull any item?
I would like to pull out on 7.2.
Okay, and then I would like to do 7.10 as well.
And 7:18.
So then can I get a motion and a second for at least the remaining balance of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
You roll call?
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore,
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
So we'll move to item 7.2. Will be the city council meeting minutes.
Yeah, so actually, Ms. McDonald was the one who pointed out to me that there's an error on the minutes, on the very last page, it says that the next meeting is taking place on Wednesday, September 11th, when it's actually today, July 24th.
Apologies, typo, we'll fix it.
Thank you.
Then we will then move to item 7.10, the administrative policy updates.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you need to vote on the.
Oh, apologize.
Move approval of item 7.2.
Second.
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore.
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, we will now move to item 7.10, administrative policy updates, which will be presented by Ernie Reyna.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. So this item here mostly has to do with the updates to the P-card policy, but also includes other items such as the technology use policy, the addition of chamber use policy, and the confirmation of the auto allowance policy. So with respect to the P-card policy, we made some updates to that policy to include items that fit the use of the city. And so on there, what we did is we added some items that are allowable in purchases. And some of those include business luncheon items in particular. And some of the other things that can be purchased, like computers, stuff that was on that list originally that really was not the intent of the policy. And so we wanted to clarify those items and ensure that they could be included with the policy itself. And so that's the intent of the P-card policy. With respect to the other items on there, I don't know if there was a specific question you had on the technology part or chamber use or auto allowance, but that's the extent of the P-card policy is doing so. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Ernie. I know there's obviously no public comments. Was there any discussion on council on this? We'll start with Councilmember Tassari. We'll just kind of go down the road here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. It's for the Finance Director. Ernie, what would be the, what's the normal procedure for making those purchases?
Sure. So prior to this, usually we issue a PO and go through the checks writing system.
What's a PO?
So PO is a purchase order, for any amounts over a certain dollar amounts, which is still being done. So that just the idea of now being able to purchase those items with a credit card as opposed to just being exclusively with a check. And these items in the past had been purchased, so it wasn't like it was not being done before, but it was done via check. And so what we want to do is make sure that those items can be included with the purchasing card, which is the intent of those cards themselves, allow the managers to make those purchases and to actually use less checks in the terms of the whole AP process. So it helps to alleviate the check writing process, but at the same time, with the controls that we have in place for the purchasing cards, it allows more flexibility within the certain parameters we have in place of the policy itself.
And it will help streamline.
Correct.
Make
Yes,
it a little more efficient.
Exactly. So this is all about efficiency and effectiveness, and that's exactly what we're trying to do is make things more effective. But still, when you see the P cards themselves, they're put onto the warrant register every month. And so that is put to the, taken to the Finance Committee, so that can be reviewed in a public setting. We review those with the council members there, and then those are brought to council every month as well. So that's clear, transparent, out in the open there.
And just to clarify too, and you can continue, Councilmember Tassari as well, is in the warrant register, it's pretty easy to understand which are credit card policies because it's the first things that come up on the warrant register is anything that is purchased with a credit card is the first page or more, depending on how many purchases there are, that is on the warrant register. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's listed by last name of the individual, so you can clearly see who actually has the credit cards and their names. And those are all, we put as much detail as we possibly can, but we have about 20 characters to list what the event was that was attended or what was purchased on there. So we try to put as much description as possible on there, but you can clearly see what the items are used for.
Thank you. And you asked that was the next question I had, so thank you.
Councilwoman Yao.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So with the check system, you need a purchasing order and then you write a check and then you reimburse the employees, right?
Correct.
But what about credit card or P card? Do you still have to approve those purchases beforehand or can you just purchase them? And then basically kind of like review it later?
Sure. It should follow the same policy. We just had a recently approved purchasing policy, I believe last month, that goes into effect, I think in August. So beginning of the month, yeah. So whatever the policy is for checks is the same as it is for credit cards. And that's the policy we're going to follow to ensure that everything's being, going through the right, embedded through the right process.
So if they needed approval to purchase something used and then get reimbursed back then, they still need the approval to purchase something using their credit card?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. And I'll give an example. Some of the items that are now being used on a credit card were done previously, just without the credit card. So if there was something that was going to happen for an employee event, then what would happen is the employee would go out and buy that and then get reimbursed. So the process shifted from a reimbursement basis through petty cash and is now being done on a credit card basis. So the process itself hasn't changed. So it's a matter of identifying what it is we're doing with the credit card, so it's all out there so that everybody can see exactly what we're doing.
So in a way, it's actually better for transparency.
Yes, because it's out there and you can see exactly what's happening. A lot of times before, when somebody gets reimbursed, you don't know exactly what was for. With the credit cards, it's out there, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lorimore.
Thank you. So I have two questions. One, well, and they're multi-part though. So one for the P card and then a couple for the auto allowance. How would you like me to do that?
You just, go, sorry, Brian.
Just list them or? Okay, we'll start with P cards. So how many does the city currently have? And what is the city expecting to have?
Sure. So currently, right now, we have about 8 to 10. I don't know the exact number, but what it is that the directors and managers have one of each various division or department. The idea is that each person in that department would have that for the use, and there would be a backup to that person as well. So there's two types of limits that are put on these P cards. There's a daily limit that a person cannot go over, and there's a monthly limit. So depending on what level they are of a director, some might have a monthly total of 10,000 with a daily limit of maybe 1,500. Everybody's levels is different. So we have an administrator that oversees all those, that person does not have a P card. That person, only through the use of Brian, can actually change those amounts. So right now, everybody has a different degree of which they can spend, but that's monitored very closely. The administrator does have rights to be able to see those purchases on a daily basis and know exactly what's going through. And so that's the protocol that we use in the dollar amounts. So it's about 8 to 10. The limits vary, but they don't really go above, I think, 10,000 for the whole month. And so credit cards have to be provided for each and every single one of those transactions. It's responsibility of that director or manager to put that all together and give it back to finance to ensure that all the purchases are accounted for. And then it needs to be signed off by their supervisor to ensure that everything was properly in place and, properly purchased. So that's how we run that one.
Okay. One of the policies, one of the stipulations was, let me find it. It's talking about lunches, which I understand if you're discussing city business. Are there any guarantees associated with that? What's the oversight on that?
Sure.
So the oversight on is the lunch a city business item is to the discretion of the manager or the director and the city manager. And if there was something that was going on where city business wasn't being conducted there, we would have a conversation. That's a learning opportunity for our managers or directors to change that. But and then if somebody becomes abusive with a credit card, then what we would do is revoke their right to have one. And so, but we are monitoring that with our administrator as well as our finance director, and then our finance committee reviews that every month. So, and that's open and transparent to the public.
Okay.
It's also a crime. It's embezzlement, so.
Okay. So we're at 10 cards?
Roughly 10 cards, yeah.
And the city plans to keep that amount of cards or go higher?
It just depends if more staff is added to different divisions. I think right now we're where we need to be. It just depends. Like I said, there's one, the division head, department head will have one, and there'll be a backup to that department that has one as well. And that's only just in case that department head is out of town or out of the office. That person has the ability to run to Staples and purchase something they may need. It's a smaller amount, a lot less limits than what the actual department head would have. But like I said, so roughly 10 cards right now.
Okay.
So an example of that would be Johnny, our community enhancement safety manager. One of his staff had a cracked windshield, a rock kicked up from a construction site, and the windshield replacement company came out and he paid for it with a credit card, and he kept the receipt, and he got it. And so it was a smooth transaction, a 21st century business transaction, because I can't remember the last time I physically wrote a personal check, and so a lot of people are using debit cards or credit cards now, and a lot of businesses are operating that way as well.
For the auto allowance, it's talking about, initially this was brought forward on June 12th, I guess, and council asked that it be brought back, that adjustments be made. No changes were made, according to the report. So questions, concerns from that meeting, those have all been addressed?
The individual that had a couple questions, we sat down with that council member, visited with about their concerns, and we addressed all of them, and so there was no need to make any additional changes. the auto allowance policy, when we reviewed amongst other cities, is handled at an administrative level. And we provided the range at which other cities are providing those, and we are within that limit.
Okay.
We are actually on the lower end of that limit.
And if you could refresh my memory, I know it was up in the air and it is administrative, but what sort of numbers are we talking about? How many employees would be able to be eligible for the auto allowance?
Right now, we are, it is per the city manager's direction and decision, and we are looking at managers and directors at that level. And we also have a Nissan Leaf in which all employees have access to should they need to run a vehicle trip in a business vehicle to reduce the reimbursement process. So we have a number of different things, but a number of our managers are using their personal car quite frequently, and the time it takes to fill out the forms and the process for that is far less efficient than just giving them a car allowance.
Okay. I don't know if I missed it. So are we talking 5, 6, 7?
We haven't identified the total number.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mark, I noticed we had a public comment card. Is it better practice just allow public comment to happen and then just kind of postpone council comments? How do we address that?
If it's specific to this item, you can take public comment for this item and then conclude and move on to the final consent item.
Okay. Yeah, let's move to the public comment card then that we just got. And then I know Jocelyn has a comment and I have a comment as well.
The speaker is Lorena Cano.
Hi, good evening. My only concern is, my name is Lorena Cano, resident of Eastvale, and my only concern is regarding the credit cards. You know, there are some rumors that the employees use credit cards to do parties, to pay for lunches, and knowing that there's gonna be 10 credit cards available, and they're using it for, say, oh, we're in a business luncheon, but actually, that's not true. How do you guys are gonna control that? You know, that they say they can use for baby showers or birthday parties, then that's not being used for what actually needs to be used, for items that we need at the city, like technology, something related to is got, you know, for us, for residents, not to throw parties, not to do baby showers, that we know that they has happened before and they've been approved, and that's why I'm here tonight. So before you guys approve something like that, you guys maybe should do more research. That's my only concern.
Thank you. I actually, that's the reason why I pulled this item is on that specific comment. So to clarify, this 7.10 item has nothing to do with what the purchases are.
Okay.
So like baby showers, birthday parties. To give more context to that, and then this will be actually my comment in general, because this is what I was going to discuss, is about a month ago, 2 council meetings ago, we had brought up as a council the employee welfare item line. So if you look at an expense item line, there's basically employee welfare item line, and there's employee development item line. So what we decided as council is that at a future council meeting, there will be an agenda item, which will be discussed among council and the public, and to discuss what is appropriate to recognize because you can, there's nothing against the law that allows you to celebrate employees' birthdays or if you want to recognize a milestone or a baby shower, whatever there's nothing against that. But what the intent of that meeting is to put it out in the open, have a discussion about it, have public input to say, what are our parameters with employee welfare, recognizing your employees? And the reason why it's being brought up is because there's an enormous attrition rate that we've had for several years that go in the ballpark of $100,000 to $200,000 and if not more over years. That costs the taxpayers far more money than spending $50 on a birthday cake to celebrate a month of birthdays. But if the public doesn't feel good about that because of the principle of it versus maybe how practical that may be, that is the discussion we are going to have. And my goal, and not to put pressure on the staff, would be hopefully we can target for a late September or early October discussion to have that agenda item up. And that would be the appropriate time where you can discuss your thoughts on celebrating a baby shower, celebrating, whatever that may be, right? And if we are okay with it, then what is the dollar amount? What are the parameters within the year? How many lunches a work lunch can we take throughout the year, a holiday part, all those things. And for us, I think it's just important to get the pulse of the community, get the pulse of the council, because it is important to recognize your employees. And sometimes that stuff doesn't cost, and sometimes it does cost. But the importance of it is that we talk about it, we know about it, put it in the open, and we're done with it. And we move forward and continue city business as normal, and everyone in the public knows this is what's okay or not okay. And the goal ultimately is to build the right amount of autonomy with appropriate parameters that allow our staff, and specifically our city manager, to function accordingly with some level of autonomy, but also some parameters that allow, that allow at least some type of restriction, so there's some oversight. And we'll create those things. And so it will come at a later agenda item.
So you say that item is gonna be listed in September agenda?
That'd be the goal, late September, early October. There's a lot of things that are coming to staff, a lot of different items, but that is already on the radar to get on the item, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. And I hope that kind of gives clarity as well.
I just wanna be sure that, the use of the credit cards are used appropriate. I worked for the public sector for 33 years, so I know a lot about credit card use. And that's why I wanna be sure, now that I'm a resident of the city, that the funds are used properly.
Thank you. No,
Thank you.
Yeah, and part of you're good, thank you. Part of the reason why, and I'll just continue my comments, part of the reason why I brought it up is today on social media, there was a lot of hoopla and talk, and it created mass confusion about this item, that it was being discussed as what to spend, and it's not. They're really two separate items. And so I just wanted to clarify that discussion will be in a future council meeting, so thank you for that. And then I'll turn to Mrs. Yao.
So from what I'm hearing, this seems like it will streamline the process, makes it more efficient. I'm assuming it's cost saving as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this is gonna affect, this has the fiscal impact and.
Well, to process a check and a PO, it takes a number of hands touching that and a lot of paperwork. And so, and can delay the purchase. And so, a lot of businesses and people personally have moved to a credit card payment system where you have a weekly or a monthly bill. And our administrator can see our purchases on a daily basis by looking them up in the bank statement. And so we are tracking that information and what we're spending. I think a lot of people have made comments about lunches. I want to use a sample. If one of my salaried managers, who normally works a 10-hour day, we go and we find a lunch hour to go discuss an item or items of business nature, and we go have lunch, and I get another 11th hour out of that employee by taking them to lunch to discuss the item, and we spend $10 on lunch or $15 on lunch, their hourly rate or their fully burdened rate is much higher than that. And so it's actually a cost savings and an appreciation for putting in extra work and doing something above and beyond. And so oftentimes that's what we're doing. We are at a pace and a performance in the city of Eastville that has never been experienced before. And we're delivering services at the highest level to our Eastville residents. And occasionally we go out and have lunch business meetings. That's also business meetings to negotiate with restaurants that we're attracting to come out here. So we just celebrated bringing the Tony's Chop House by the Meat Cellar and Heroes. Those took us going out to those restaurants to sit down with their owners and visit with them about coming to the city. So there's a number of times when we're having business meetings or where we're getting advice or information or something like that that can help us better serve our residents and grow. So that's just one example.
Any other comments on this item? All right, if not, I would like to ask for a motion and a second.
Just Mayor Pro Tem, I will make the commitment that that comes back either at the second meeting in September or the first meeting in October.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, you know, it's becoming a pressing item, and I think it's just, we just need to address it and just get in the open and then move forward and go, and move on.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to separate out, bifurcate this agenda item. So I would like to bifurcate out the P cards from the other items that are within item 7.10 for a separate vote. And I would like,
No, that's acceptable, it just has to be orally done with whoever makes the motion.
So just to clarify, what two items are you bifurcating?
separating out the P card policy from the rest of 7.10 for a separate vote.
Okay, so purchase card and technology use policy, and then there's the additional chamber use policy, and then there's confirmation of the auto allowance policy. So there's almost three in that.
The purchasing card,
Okay.
I'm sorry?
You want to lump the three together and then just do the P card all by itself?
Yes.
Second.
Any roll call? Would that work? You want to clarify that?
So is this a motion to approve the three, besides the P card? The auto
Yes.
allowance, technology use, and chambers use?
Yes.
So we have first and second, and then roll call.
Councilmember Yao?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore?
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Then we would do a motion for approval and a second on the purchasing card, just by itself. In that policy. So we have a motion and a second?
So on that, the reason that I've asked to separate this out, I have concerns with just the ease of being able to spend money. These are taxpayer dollars. I fully support and understand why staff is presenting this. That being said, I don't, too many credit cards out there. I would like to see the number smaller, and that's why I'm going to be voting no against this item.
What would you like to reduce the credit cards to?
I don't have a preference on that. I was surprised that we had 10, but I think the less the better. But I don't know where the rest of the council is on this.
What if this is a good, maybe a compromise here? What if we just had one for each department head, and then we just gotta communicate, I mean, each department has to communicate when one's out or the other, and just have one for each department head, and then just leave it at that. And then we just gotta make sure, you know, to keep the efficiency there, we just gotta make sure we gotta communicate when a head is out, you know, that we're there instead of a backup. If that makes.
We can have it for the city manager and the department heads?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't, that, would you be comfortable with that?
That'd be
You can make
four.
that motion, I still feel
Okay,
uncomfortable with
okay.
it. but-
Okay.
Why don't we, I'm actually for that. Why don't we just minimize the amount for city manager and department heads and then make a motion on that for one credit card for each? Would that be fine?
That's fine.
All right, then we're clear on that. So it'd be, what would be that total? Be up 6, 5?
What would be the number?
It would reduce it down to probably 5, yeah, about half.
That, I would feel more comfortable with that as well.
All right, all right, let's do everyone clear on that motion then? Or on that suggestion? Okay, we'll need a motion and a second.
So I move.
Second.
Councilmember Yao?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore?
No.
Councilmember Tesari?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
We will now move to item 7.18, funding for school resource officer for ERHS and the East End Academy. And Brian, can you lead us in that?
Yes. Let me turn to it right here. On June 26th, we had a presentation from Assistant Superintendent Sam Buenostro. Did I say it right? From the Corona Norco Unified School District. We also had a guest speaker in Captain Morin from the Harupa Valley Sheriff's Station. And they shared about not only the demand for and the need for a second school site resource officer on campus. They were looking to do a cost sharing with the city for that. So over the last 2 weeks, Sam and I worked on, along with our city attorney and his attorney, on a resolution agreement to bring back before you to split the cost of a school site resource officer. It's something that's done in common practice in some other jurisdictions, such as the city of Corona. If they aren't able to handle the challenges and issues on campus, they spill over into our city, and we need to address them and it's a little easier to control them on the campus than when they spill out into the city. And so we are recommending a split 50-50 with the school site resource officer. That is up to discussion with the council, but that was something that they brought forward, and council asked me to bring something back so that they could get the school year started off if they could make that business decision for the school year.
For the report.
And Dr. Buenostra and the top security safety district administrator is also here.
Thank you for being present as well. I'll just turn to Mark. Was anybody pull public comment cards? I don't know if it's something's come up or not.
No.
Okay. Then we'll open up to council comments. I'll start with, since you pulled the item, Clint, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that I asked some follow-up questions and those were answered via email. So that is appreciated. I want to start off by saying that. That being said, while I completely agree that there should be a second student resource officer over at the campus, that we have seen exponential growth in the student body populace. I also understand that the district gets its money based on student attendance at schools. And I think that based off of previous discussions about the number of students when the school started with one school resource officer present, I think we've more than doubled that. And so it made sense to have one at that time, and it was justified in terms of payment. It seems to me that the school district would be able to cover it with a second one, given the number of students that are there. I completely agree that it does need it, and I truly, I commend the district for coming up with creative ways of financing it, but our job is not to cover school costs as a city. And that $75,000 that is being asked, if a project, if something was brought forward, for instance, a grant that we could sign onto and work collaboratively to bring a grant to the city, I would absolutely be in favor of doing that. But having the city pay for it when we could take that same money and put it towards a deputy on our street instead, that is what I would absolutely, that's what I was elected to do, is to look out for our taxpayer dollars, and part of that is utilizing those resources to effectuate safety in the community. And actually all of us were. And so I have those concerns, my reservations related to this. I also, in my own research, I looked up, I think that the school district, it's a large school district, has, I think it was $589 million budget this last year. Our city budget pales in comparison to that. And maybe we can come to an agreement where we're asking you guys to help fund our police officers on our street, because the same students on campus there. Maybe we can, we need them safe at home too. So Those are my comments and why I asked for this to be pulled. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lormore. Is any other comments on this?
Yeah, just regarding summer school, would the additional deputy be present during summer school? Or is it just a 9-month position?
We do field the resource officer for summer school as well.
Mr. Buenrostro, can you come to the mic and this gets all recorded?
Yeah, thank you. And good evening, everyone. Yeah, we do field officer for our summer school. And this past year, we had summer school at 3 of the different high schools, one in Norco, Eastvale, and City of Corona. And we do provide a resource officer for that.
So there's one there, or has been one there this past month?
Not the past.
Roosevelt?
When summer school was in session, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so with the additional school resource officer, would there be 2 of them, or would you just be having one deputy present?
I would anticipate only one for summer because of smaller number of students. We're probably looking at under 2,000 in the summer.
Yeah, it is a much smaller number, but it seems to have a lot of additional issues. Just because it seems like the number of incidents are, there's a far greater number of incidents occurring during summer school than during the regular school year, just because of the nature of the students that are there at the time. And I know that's Roosevelt's drop-off point for the continuation school. I think they drop the kids over there to get picked up when the bus brings them over there.
Yeah. Not for summer school.
Oh, that's during the.
That's during the regular school
Okay.
year.
All right.
I'll hang around for any other questions.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem, I just also wanted to highlight when Dr. Buenosta and I were visiting, and I'm butchering his last name, so I apologize.
Just call him
Doctor. When we talked, they are also reevaluating the amount of security, private security that is on their campus, and they have a metric system for that. They have committed that they're striving to not reduce that number, but also with the growth in the campus, that number might also increase. And so, so they're not going to reduce the security to fund the RSO, but rather the RSO or the school site resource officer would be expanding the law enforcement presence on campus.
Yeah, I understand my colleagues' concerns, but I actually feel the opposite. I just think that the school is as much a part of this community as any business or any park even. So I think $75,000 is a small price for us to pay to get an additional officer during the school year, considering there's going to be close to 5,000 students on that campus at any given time. And it's incredibly taxing for the one deputy that's assigned there now. It's very overwhelming with that number of students and the different things going on. So they need a partner. And I understand it is the school district's responsibility to provide the adequate security, but as a community partner, I'm in favor of splitting the cost of having an additional deputy assigned there.
Councilmember Yao.
I agree. I definitely see Councilmember Lori Moore's concern and his point, but we, as electeds, I do think that we have the responsibilities to protect all of our residents, including our high school kids. And like I mentioned last time, that you can't put a price tag on the safety of our kids. And this, again, for $75,000, I think that's a decent amount. And I think it is our obligation to make sure that the kids are safe, and I'm sure the parents will appreciate that too.
If I can add something quickly, you may remember that Captain Morin mentioned that he had brought it up to us, and quite frankly, when he did about 2 months ago or so, caught us a little bit off guard. But it definitely understand his concern with the number of students and with the eSTEM opening up this coming year. So you have our commitment. In fact, Steve and I today we're talking to a strategic partnership group, which is our grant writer, and from New York, and we will aggressively pursue grants, and we have. And I think I mentioned previously, and I communicated that this past year we received 3 grants. We're looking for that law enforcement grant. We're pursuing law enforcement and mental health and foster youth and some of those programs that we know are so critical for the city and for the district.
The only thing that I would ask for is a guarantee that if you get a grant and it covers the full 150,000, that we're not getting billed for our 75.
Thank you for that clarification. And yes, and absolutely. And the other thing is, what was I going to say related to the grant? I lost my frame of thought. But we're actively seeking the grant, and obviously, because it would help the city and us. So that is something that we will be really aggressive on, and hopefully we have that opportunity. And immediately, once we get it, obviously we want to offset that for both you and us.
Yeah, I don't know if there will be any issues. I know when you write the grant, if you already have part of it being paid for by us, that's not going to affect your ability to qualify.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. No, I think we have some leeway in some of the grants that we have out there. And not only that, we are, if we were to move forward, we would pay for the cost upfront, and then we would bill the city. And the other thing is, we talked about, and in the MOU, there's conversation to revisit this in the spring and see if it's working, obviously for you guys, but also for us. And if we continue a second year, or we just stop it. Hopefully we can stop it and go through the grant route.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll make a commitment to council, should this get approved tonight, that we'll provide the full resources of the city to help them seek grants and sign off on those grants should the city need to be signed off on those grants.
Yeah, we kind of dropped the ball last year on that one, so yeah, it'd be good that we take advantage of that as well. I do have one, more of a semantics question just on the allocation. So obviously the max contribution from the city is $75,000. So I just want to clarify if the cost of the officer, or the SRO is 100. If it's 100, let's say it's 130,000, right? Is our cost only 65,000?
Correct.
Which is still 75.
Correct.
And if, let's say, the cost of that officer's at 180,000 for whatever reason, our cost is 75,000.
Correct.
At its max. Okay, just want to clarify.
Because we do know that there's possibilities with the events and evenings and things that come up that there's going to be overtime. Steve and I have talked about that commitment that the district will take care of that. Absolutely.
Thank you for clarification.
So the MOU is 50% up to 75.
Yep, makes sense. And that's what I just wanted to clarify. That's what I was reading. I just wanted to clarify in a question. Is there any additional comments? I would like, if we're gonna motion this, the one thing I would say is I'd like to, I don't know if we're able to do that, but to add kind of Councilmember Tessari's comments as far as a contingency where if there is a grant that is received, to be able to be, I don't know if you call it reimbursement or whatever you'd call it, but some type of allocation to help offset those costs. I'd like to have that as a motion, so it has kind of more teeth to it, to help, to help us with that. Would that be feasible, Eric, if that's possible, or is that difficult to do?
It would have to be an amendment to the agreement that's before you this evening, or a revision to the agreement that's before you this evening. And would need to make sure that the district would be able to agree to it. Okay, so we can just, in your motion to approve the agreement, it will be with the revision that grant monies received will offset the city's financial contribution to the same extent as the districts.
No, that works, and then we can ratify at the next council meeting. With that.
You can do that tonight.
Okay.
As a part of your motion. We'll make that edit in the agreement that gets executed.
Perfect. All right, is there any other additional council comments? Okay, if not, would like to have a motion on that, based on that motion we just discussed right now, and a second.
So I move.
Second.
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore?
No.
Councilmember Tesari?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
We are now finished with the consent calendar and we'll move forward to item 8, public hearings. We have 2 public hearing items tonight. And as a reminder, if you would like to speak on this item or these items, please complete a blue speaker form and the clerk will call you up when the public comment portion has been opened. So, Ms. Gina Williams, would you like to proceed with item 8.1, which is the residential beekeeping ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. Tonight's presentation will be given by our planner, Emily Elliott.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. The matter before you this evening is to consider an amendment to the zoning code that would permit the residential keeping of bees. It is a land use that is not currently permitted within the city, and staff was directed to research residential beekeeping and present a recommendation. All right, so the code amendment, the ordinance that's before you and within the staff report relies on a few key terms that I'll address right now. And that when we mean bee, we're referencing the common European honeybee, not any other type of bee. Residential beekeeping is meant to be non-commercial and accessory to the residential dwelling unit. And a bee box means the physical structure that houses the bees. Now, bees are responsible for the pollination of crops, habitat, and the vegetated landscapes around homes and businesses throughout the city. And through the process of reviewing beekeeping materials and interviewing beekeepers, we've learned that keeping bees takes very little space. Bees can travel quite far, up to 5 miles from their hive, and that they tend to ignore the vegetation immediately around their box, preferring to disperse. And while bees can travel up to 5 miles, we've been informed by master beekeepers that most bees tend to travel 1 to 2 miles from their hives as they forage. And that what you see on the screen is a 2-mile radius across the city of Eastvale to give you an idea of if someone living at that green pin had a bee box, that's about how far on average their bees would be traveling. And this was an important fact for staff when we were considering the effectiveness of separation requirements that are often found in bee ordinances. Now, staff performed a comprehensive review of all Riverside and Orange County jurisdictions for beekeeping ordinances, and we found that some jurisdictions that have older ordinances do allow residential beekeeping, but they have such restrictive standards that it's effectively a ban on residential beekeeping. And we found that some regulations were not based on the facts and characteristics of bees. Again, this goes back to separation requirements and the natural nature of bees to travel great distances. We also found that successful residential beekeeping exists in rural, suburban, and in urban city environments. And nearby cities that have recently adopted residential beekeeping ordinances are the cities of Fullerton and Santa Ana. And finally, we expanded our review to include cities like San Francisco, or Oakland, and Sacramento. These are all large, very densely populated cities that have recently lifted bans and are now promoting residential beekeeping. Based on what we've learned, and with the input and refinement of the Planning Commission, we are recommending an approach that would allow residential beekeeping with a permit, with notice given to adjacent neighbors, that would promote best management practices, with simple standards that are easy to enforce, and that includes a definition of nuisance conditions that our community enhancement officers can respond to. The standards for beekeeping that are being proposed is to allow each residential lot to have up to 4 bee boxes. The boxes are not to exceed 6 feet in height. They have to be located in the rear yard and be secured from unauthorized access. A permit would be required. The purpose of this would be to establish a registry of permitted locations. Also, noticing of adjacent neighbors would be required, and documentation of a bee allergy during the permit process can halt the permit. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the zoning code amendment to allow residential beekeeping. The City Council does have options. You can approve the ordinance as it's written. You can direct staff to make changes and continue the matter to a future meeting, or you could deny the amendment. And with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And I also want to note that there's a representative from the Orange County Beekeepers Association in the audience, that if you have technical questions about beekeeping, that they could answer. And they did bring in their own bee box to give the commissioners and the community an idea of what a bee box looks like.
We appreciate that. So we will now officially open the public hearing at this moment. This time, and just before we go into any comments, we just need to open that up. And do we have any public comment cards on this?
We do not.
No. You're off public. I know you came. I think pointed because you came a while back to have some public. Did you want to mention anything or? Or actually, I was kind of pointing back that way too. Okay, so I remember you had commented on this before, so I remember your face. I just wanted to make sure. Well, seeing that there is no public comments, then we will, correct me if I'm right, Eric, we will close the public hearing at this point, and then we will turn to council for discussion, and you might as well stay. I'm sure there's gonna be questions, and yeah. Council member, which one else goes first? We'll go council member Tesari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. My question is, was there any research done on statistics regarding like bee stings for cities that already have their permit beekeeping versus other cities who have a prohibition on it?
Sure. So we didn't research bee stings, but we did research, or we did reach out to the cities that have these new ordinances that allow residential beekeeping. We were not successful in getting responses back from all of them, but we did talk with the city of Fullerton, who said that they have not had a surge in new beekeepers in their city. Rather, they've sort of legalized the existing underground beekeepers. Same with the city of Santa Ana. And then we also heard back from the city of San Francisco after a long delay, and that they are not aware of any ongoing issues that they have with bees. But they also don't require a permit in San Francisco, so they don't have a registry or know how many are operating within their city.
All right. That's all I had.
Council member, yeah.
I noticed in at the PowerPoint, on the PowerPoint, it says that when, for instance, if my neighbor is applying for a permit, the city would have to put out notices for the neighbors as well? So myself included, am I correct?
It would be just the adjacent
Just the
property,
adjacent.
the properties that share property line with the permittee. So in a lot of cases, we do a radius of say 300 feet, or
Got it.
it would not be that, it would just be the immediately adjacent parcels.
Got it. And do the neighbors have a say in this?
They are able to provide a doctor's letter stating that they have a severe bee allergy,
Okay.
and that could halt the permit.
But that will be the only case where you can halt the permit.
Yes.
I have a question just to that, if you don't mind. So in that circumstance, that's actually a good point you bring up. In that circumstance, if the person pulls the permit, is there a process that neighbors around that vicinity would know that that person is pulling a permit in case of the circumstance that there is a bee allergy or anything like that?
Just the adjacent property owners would be notified, not the broader neighborhood.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like maybe the neighbors are across the street. Like, I guess, what would be the distance of? Would it just be neighbor to neighbor and that's it, or would it be how many houses? I guess
It would be the adjacent parcels, and in the case where there's a street in between, there'd be the house directly across the street.
Okay, no, makes sense.
I got stung by bees twice, so I have that's why I had to ask that.
And if I may, this discussion came up when we were talking with a beekeeper, and short of DNA testing, there's no way to identify the bee that stings you is a wild bee, a feral bee, or a bee from someone's bee box. And if it, was a domesticated bee, was it from your neighbor's bee or from the bee box 2 miles away? So there's really no way to tell who the guilty bee box party is.
I might just say that I'm highly allergic to bee stings, and my next door neighbors growing up had beehives, and I never got stung by a bee on my property. That doesn't mean I didn't get stung a number of times as a kid, but never in my neighborhood when I wasn't doing something to the bees.
But you got a lot of, but you had a lot of bee, yeah, you had a lot of bee stings though when you were a kid? Makes total sense, it makes a lot of sense. Just kidding. Councilmember Lorimore.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Wanted to ask, so each residential lot, according to this, can have no more than 4 bee boxes. That's one, right?
Yes.
And, but that could be 6 feet high. If that were 6 feet high, approximately how many bees would be inside?
So I could be corrected by any of the beekeepers in here, but our understanding is that the bottom box is where the bees live. Every box that you add on top of that is for honey storage.
Okay.
And we chose the height of 6 feet because we didn't want boxes to exceed the height of typical neighborhood fences and walls. But right, so it's generally 1 hive per box. And then the necessity of having multiple boxes is that over time, hives do grow in population, and to prevent a swarming situation, good beekeepers will split their hives and then sell their bees or relocate them somewhere else. So the ability to have additional boxes on site is good to help split and break down those hives. You could correct me, but how many bees live in a hive typically?
Okay, so having the multiple boxes, the 4 bee boxes, that would be multiple hives in the same yard? Or that would be one that would extend out to different?
You could potentially have multiple hives in each yard. However, a good beekeeper probably wouldn't keep 4 active hives if they are limited to 4 boxes total, because they would need that ability to split.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I'm sorry, 8,000 bees for 1 box. So then you're 32,000 possible bees? Oh, to 80,000?
So literally I can fit 10,000, 15,000 bees in my hand just like this.
Okay.
That much. Less than 3,000 bees.
Okay, so I also wanted to understand, I saw the graphic up there about the 2-mile radius, but they could go 5 miles. So if 2 neighbors decided they like this idea, so you have one that has the bees, and then the neighbor sees that and goes, I want to do honey in my yard too, and they can do it as well? Or is there a separation?
Yes, no, that's correct.
And then the next one could do it too, if they wanted to?
Yes. Now, that's an unlikely situation if
Right.
what we hear from other cities is true and that there's not a big rush of people clamoring to get in on this hobby. In speaking with other beekeepers, having 8 hives in close proximity to each other would not be very successful. And now, because you're creating too much competition between the hives and the bees, and in that case, the bees will probably just leave. And so I guess that's the incentive to the beekeepers to maintain a reasonable number of hives, because if they are not, and the bees are not successful in foraging, they'll just leave.
Right now, bees from Harupa Valley, Ontario, Chino, and Norco could be in the city of Eastvale because they all overlap us.
We gotta tag them. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I did want to ask though, so this 2-mile radius that is up here, but they can go up to 5 miles. With that graphic, I'm scratching my head as to why we are only looking in this policy to contact people directly adjacent as opposed to even a couple blocks over. Why is that?
It was an idea that we borrowed from the city of Fullerton, and that was essentially, their idea there was an olive branch to the neighbors in allowing the beekeeping. But scientifically, the idea of just noticing the adjacent neighbors probably doesn't make a lot of sense because we know bees travel such great distances and tend to ignore the forage that's closest to their hive. But it was something that was demonstrated to that city that the residents appreciated, and we wanted to extend that within our proposal as well.
Excellent, thank you.
What would be the detriment, I guess kind of educate me a little bit, if we were to restrict this to just one hive instead of 4 hives? Just, again, you gave the reason why someone maybe not do multiple hives, but for the sake of policy, if we just said, hey, you can have 4 boxes up to 6 feet, but you can only have 1 hive, is there an issue with that?
It could potentially be difficult to enforce. I mean, we would having to send code enforcement out there to actually look within boxes. My understanding from talking with the beekeepers is that just having 1 box or just 1 hive tends to not be very successful, and that most beekeepers in a residential setting will maintain 2 hives.
Okay. Do you see people doing more than 2 hives in this type of situation?
There are cases of that with one of the beekeepers that we interviewed from City of Fullerton. She maintains 6 hives within her backyard.
So, okay.
To give
I'm
you
just trying to I'm trying
yeah.
to fully understand this whole concept, and
To
so.
give you some more context, I believe it's the City of Sacramento. They have a 2 hive limit there with no permit requirement or very minimal requirements.
So my next question, this is more of just an estimate. Let's say this was approved, and my thought would maybe to restrict the amount of hives. That's kind of where I'm getting at. But let's say this was approved. How many, just kind of feeling the pulse of Eastville, how many of these you think would happen all of a sudden? You think how many permits would be pulled, you would think, from your experience, would happen in Eastville?
I would suggest very few. In the couple of planning commission meetings that we've had and outreach meetings, there are some existing underground beekeepers within the city of Eastville. Those are probably the people we would expect to come get permits right away. But from talking to them, it's not an easy or inexpensive hobby, and they don't anticipate there to be a big demand for this.
So that might be my question. Enforcement may be easier. That's why, if it was just everyone doing it, enforcement would be difficult. But if we're talking a few people, I mean, Brian, what would be, maybe this could be a question for Johnny as well, but what would, enforcement look like if we just said, hey, we limit this to 2 hives? And then the question is enforcement, and if we know there's a limited number of people doing this, it almost seems like it'd be easy to manage, but I might be wrong, on that.
We could just approve it and see if there's an issue with it, and if there is an issue with it, then we can adjust it.
Okay.
I'm not expecting a big issue with it because we only had about 4 speakers at the planning commission, and we didn't have any speakers tonight. So I'm not anticipating a huge rush of beekeeping permits coming into City Hall, but I could be surprised, and if I am, we will bring that back up to council's attention if it becomes an issue in the community.
Thank you. Councilmember Yao? Question? Well, no problem. Yeah, any other questions?
I was just gonna say, we have our underground resident beekeeper here. How many hives do you have? Just 1? Is it okay if he says something, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm okay with if
If it comes up, you'd have to reopen the public hearing and then close it.
Yeah. So then, what we'll do is we'll just reopen the public hearing, and then if you don't mind, if you can speak in the microphone, just kind of say your name, and then after, you can fill out a public comment card, and then we'll just officially open it, and then we'll just close it again, if that works.
Okay, sure, thank you. Thank you very much for the time. George Kamal, resident here in Eastville. That issue, just to answer the question on the quantity, the amount of hives, that was brought up during the planning commission, and we ended up, there was adjustments made, and then a second meeting was held after that. And the reason for it is because when it comes to beekeeping, the reason most beekeepers will have more than 1 hive is because as your hive grows, if you're only allowed to have, like, say, 2 hives, it's a lot more difficult to maintain your hive and keep them from swarming. As they grow, they tend to decide, the bees, okay, we're running out of room, let's leave, and they'll swarm. So limiting beekeepers to having a small amount of hives actually encourages swarming to happen within the community. And so you'll end up having beekeepers with a higher percentage of chances losing their bees that are gonna be people having swarms of bees up in their trees or something as they leave. So because a beekeeper, what they do is it's called hive manipulation. As you're working on your beehive and as they're growing, you can take out frames, move them around, keep the queen in one box and move them around to kind of reduce the population inside of it. So that way they end up seeing that they're not getting overcrowded and then they stay within that hive and then you move those bees into another one. And so some beekeepers will end up doing is moving that hive somewhere else, the new one, or keeping it. So it makes it a lot more difficult on beekeepers to be able to keep their bees from swarming if they're limited to only 2 hives. So it's actually a benefit to the community to allow more hives because it allows more hive manipulation to keep the bees from swarming and leaving. So that's where it was. And I have 1 hive, and big reason is because I'm just getting started. I'm new at this, and so mine hasn't grown huge. But with time, a hive can grow very big, as Aaron said, up to 80,000 bees. But when it gets to that point, they start looking to swarm and leave. And then they leave some bees behind that try to repopulate the colony, but the majority of them, up to about 70%, leave with the queen, and they take off to find a new home and start growing from there. And then you end up with citizens calling and saying they have a swarm of bees in their trees, stuff like that. So it's actually to benefit the community, the encouragement of more hives.
Thank you, well said. We have 2 comments. You may want to stay up because there's some questions for you maybe.
I was just gonna say, they usually end up at the Bootsma Ranch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I have a clarifying,
Councilmember Lorimer.
question? Thank you. I want to understand, I'm hearing hives, I'm hearing colonies, I'm hearing boxes. Are the boxes, where, in the bottom box is where the colony hangs out and the boxes are called hives?
Yes, sir. So typically a hive is comprised of brood boxes and honey boxes. Those are basically 2 parts. Usually the first 2 boxes at the bottom are known as brood boxes. That's where the queen stays, typically, the bottom 2, and lays her eggs. And that's basically just where they increase the colony by the queen laying eggs, becoming larvae, then becoming bees. And the boxes that go above it, the honey supers, usually there's something called a queen excluder that they put between it. It's to keep the queen from going up and laying eggs. So with the end of only the honey bee, the worker bees, the females worker bees get to go up there, and all they do is fill it with honey, and that's it. So there's no capability of it becoming medicinal bees because the queen's staying at the bottom, so she can't go in there and lay an egg. So as they create cells on their frames of the hive, if the queen gets a chance, she'll lay an egg in there. So then the nurse bees will go in there and start feeding it when it hatches to a larva, and they'll create a bee. But if you keep the queen from moving up, she can't lay eggs, and the colony won't get any bigger. It'll just be honey, all honey storage. That's it. And so that's what a hive is comprised of: the brood box where the queen's laying her eggs, and then the honey supers. And so there are it can be a lot of bees, but you have to also understand that some of those bees don't leave; they stay there. They're there taking care of the babies. You have the male bees that stay there. The only ones leaving are the worker bees. The female worker bees, they're the ones that leave, go collect pollen and nectar, and then they come back. And that's it. So some bees stay inside, some leave. Some of them don't leave. Of the thousands that could be in there, thousands of them stay there all day and never come out.
Okay. So, question for staff, if you don't mind. That has to do with the colony itself. So we're talking about only 1 queen bee per property, or are we talking about multiple colonies on the property?
The ordinance as it's written doesn't regulate the number of queens. It just regulates the number of boxes. So it would be up to the beekeeper how they want to distribute bees amongst their boxes.
Having different colonies on the same property, I don't know, but I'm asking, is there a problem with that? Do they not like each other? Are they cool with each other?
All good questions. They're not a bad question.
Do you want to can you come up here and say your name, please?
My name's Aaron Riker. Thanks for having me. So it's 1 queen per colony. You can have multiple right next to each other. I manage about 15 beehives, not in Eastville. Great city, by the way. You can have multiple right next to each other. They don't mind each other. If stores become to get low, they may go borrow some from next door, but it's not an all-out war or anything like that.
Okay, All right,
One
cool.
queen per colony, and that's all you need.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Yao?
And I'm sorry if this is sort of a dumb question, but I'm gonna be frank and be blunt. Why do we need this?
There's a variety of reasons why people choose to keep bees at home. For one of the gentlemen here in the audience, he's got a son with pretty bad allergies, and one of the ways to try to combat those allergies is through the provision of locally sourced honey. And the way that works is that now you're exposing yourself to like the particular pollen plants in your region that are affecting your allergies, and now you're like low dosing yourself to build up a tolerance. So that's one reason why someone would do this. The other could just be the fact that people are concerned about bee colony collapse. It's a big deal, and that bees are essential for our food, for native habitat, for our landscapes. Those are they are what make our flowers bloom and food grow. And bees are disappearing at an alarming rate, and that's generated some of the interest in people wanting to keep bees in their backyards. But really, with residential beekeeping, it's not about making money because it can't be. It's an accessory, hobby, non-commercial use. So you won't be seeing somebody in your neighbor's backyard tending to 15 bee boxes to go sell at the farmer's market.
I have a question for city staff. So if someone were to apply for the permit, do they have to pay for it? Like, what's the process like?
That hasn't been established at this point of what a fee would be. And I suppose that would depend on whether this ordinance is approved this evening. We would probably need to come back for a recommendation on what that fee would be and approval from the council.
Because I'm also thinking from the residents' perspective, if I have this underground beekeeping activities and if I were to have to pay for a fee, why would I want to register myself and subject to regulations and for the fee? But on the other hand, if we don't pay, if we are not asking the residents to pay for it, it's an additional cost for the city. Just thinking out loud here.
Right, and to that point, by adopting this ordinance, it would be permitting residential beekeeping, provided that the individual has a permit. So then if they don't have a permit, now they have an ordinance that they can be out of compliance with, and code and community enhancement has something then to go after. But right now, there's nothing in the code, so addressing underground beekeeping is quite difficult.
Do we know what some of the fee schedules were from the other cities that you looked at?
I don't, but we could look into that and bring it back for you.
Yeah, just, like it to be reasonable.
Sure. I believe Fullerton is the only one that in our local area that asks for a permit. Santa Ana is a little different. They have quite a few regulations, but they don't require a permit.
If I may, as the ordinance is currently drafted, it is an extremely limited process to get a permit. Based off of a cost recovery analysis, I can't imagine it would be very much money at all to come in and get a permit for this.
Yeah, I'm getting signals that it's like $25 is the average.
I don't know what the averages are elsewhere, but it will be a very low cost permit based off of the way the ordinance is.
That's correct. Essentially, they would have to just fill out a form with their information and provide mailing labels to the adjacent properties, and then notices would go out to those properties. If no one provided evidence of bee allergy that would halt the permit, then the permit would just be granted.
We will have one more public comment, and then after that, we'll close the public hearing. Then Boots will come up, and then again, just make sure you guys both fill out public comment cards and give them to Mark, our city clerk.
My question is, I've had 3 swarms at my house. And the first time it cost $2,200 to remove them because it was, in the roof. The second time was in the lemon tree, so that was easy pickup. And the third time, it cost $750, and these cones were all filled with baby bees. 5 different cones. He was going to make 5 hives out of the cones. They were all babies. I was just wondering if the more boxes would stop the swarms from coming. I'm not against beekeeping, but I would like to keep them out of my yard so I don't have to pay money to remove them. So I just wonder if they, if the more hives would solve that problem or not. Thank you.
Yeah, valid question, and I think, and again, if we didn't touch on it, it sounds like we may have touched on that, but I'm not. Again, it sounds like with not limiting the hives, that might solve the issue of what Mr. Guzman was talking about, but maybe if you can clarify for that.
Sure. So I don't know that allowing residential beekeeping would reduce the swarming that you're experiencing with what are likely feral beehives. So I can't see that your situation would really change one way or the other.
Any comments on that? Okay, we will now close the public hearing, and looks like council discussion is also complete. So then, what we do is at this time is we would ask for a motion and a second on this.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore,
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you for all the input and information. I know it helped us greatly in this dialogue, so we appreciate it. We will now move to the next public hearing item, 8.2. It's the public hearing of the LLMD number 89-1 and number 2014-1, 2014-3, 2014-4, and BAD number 2014-2. And Ernie, can you lead us in this discussion?
Absolutely, yes. So I'll make this quick. This is for the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District, just like you mentioned, and the Benefit Assessment District. So I also have Adina McCargo here in the audience of NBS, if there's any questions after this quick report. So these two are for resolutions. The first is a resolution of the City of Eastville approving the engineer's report, confirming the diagram and assessment, and ordering the levy for fiscal year 1920 for landscape and lighting maintenance districts number 89-1, consolidated, number 2014-1, number 2014-3, and number 2014-4. And the second resolution being for the improvement of the engineer's report, confirming the diagram assessment and ordering the levy for fiscal year 1920 for benefit assessment district number 2014-2. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions, and Adine is also here if you have any questions on that as well.
Thank you, Ernie. We will now open the public hearing. And so, Mark, has there been any public comments on this item?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody like to make public comments on this? If not, we will close the hearing and we'll turn to council discussions. Any comments? Gina wanted to make a comment. She wanted the cookies. Okay. So seeing that there's no discussion, then we'll ask you for a motion and a second.
So I move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Yao,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore,
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mark. That will now end our public hearing, and we will move forward to item number 9, City Council Business, which leads us to 9.1, Western Community Energy Update. Ryan, would you like to lead us in this discussion?
Yes. I will actually have Tyler come up
Yeah.
from Western Riverside COG. As you all know, Mayor Todd Rigby is our representative on the WCE, and he has asked for this to come to the commission tonight because a vote is needed tonight to determine whether we are moving forward with WCE, and staff's recommendation is to proceed. Staff and the mayor's recommendation is to proceed with the WCE from all our meetings. And so Tyler is here to give a very brief presentation because you've had numerous presentations on this. And this is just to continue the process of signing on with the WCE and giving our residents and businesses choices and options to their energy choices.
Sneaking up to just grab a cookie, but I'll stay up just to give a quick update.
I don't share cookies.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Plot and Eastville Council members. My name is Tyler Masters. I'm Program Manager at Western Community Energy. I'll be brief today. I'd like to just provide a really quick update on Western Community Energy and to inform Council that everything is essentially moving upon moving along schedule, as we've provided numerous updates, as Brian was mentioning, over the past couple of months. Everything's moving along, so it's not going to be a particularly riveting PowerPoint presentation. It will be brief, and we do have a video, though. So I just want to provide a quick update. As a reminder, on July 25th, the City of Eastvale City Council joined 6 other cities, creating Western Community Energy, WCE. WCE is a community choice aggregation energy program modeled after similar existing programs across the state, allowed by state law. Programs like WCE, as Brian mentioned, allowed for jurisdictions to join together, purchasing energy on behalf of their residents and community members, with the mission of providing a competitive rate and competitive alternatives to investor-owned utility sources such as Edison. So really, what would it do? It really just provides the choices that are totally voluntary, the rates that residents and community members can have for their electricity. They just have additional options with WCE. Can always opt in and out at any time, creating favorable economic development opportunities within the city of Eastvale and other participating cities in Western Community Energy. WCE program goals as set by our board of directors. The first rate, electricity rate, to match Southern California Edison and to provide that default rate at a discount. That was a huge goal. One of the second developments was creating a second optional rate for those folks that want to know that 100% of their electricity come from a renewable source. That's an option as well. Just again, providing options, but that default rate is matching Edison's at a discounted cost. Oops. I already kind of talked about the actions to date where we've come from. Our board of directors has developed a number of our program goals, implemented operating, administrative and operating policies. So where are we at in the process of implementation? We've developed and are implementing, in the middle of implementing our 2019 outreach campaign. We have about 4, you see the 4 community events there. We've attended 2 of them. Great events, Picnic in the Park, National Night Out. We're scheduled for 2 more the remainder of the year. We also conducted a ratepayer survey, which was a really great opportunity for us to survey over 300 folks with over 300 residents within Eastvale, and across the board, generally consensus among the county, but within the city of Eastvale, over 68% of folks surveyed said they would support participating in WC after being just provided a little bit of information. The next subset of folks were unsure and needed additional information, and just a small handful of folks opposed. But this is, those 318 voters were interested in saving any amount of money on their utility bill, preferring options to Southern California Edison, and having that opportunity to set rates locally were all things that folks supported. So what's next? 2019 year, we would be procuring energy supply, setting and designing rates. Next year in 2020, we would be notifying folks 2 months prior and 2 months post launch. And then in summer 2020 timeframe, we would be launching and servicing customers, your residents. These are our contacts. Rick and Barbara are also with me in the audience. We'd be happy to answer any questions. If we could play that video, that would be great.
Eastvale residents will soon have a choice on how to power up their home or business. A new program, Western Community Energy, gives us a choice in how we get our electricity. Using existing transmission lines, this program gives Eastvale local control over rates and the kind of energy we receive. A recent survey found that 64% of county voters support participation in Western Community Energy. There's no risk to residents who can opt in or out of the program at any time. We all want lower rates and a choice for cleaner energy. Western Community Energy gives Eastvale and other cities in Riverside County control over where and how we get our electricity.
Thank you for the presentation there. And then, Mark, has there been any public comments on this?
There's no cards.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll open up to council discussion. Any items or questions that we have? Councilmember Lorrimore.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. So previously, in previous presentations, we talked about off-ramps and opportunities to get off without any, and go with what we currently have, which is SCE, and there not being any economic consequences to doing that. Is this the last off-ramp, or do we have more?
This is the last off-ramp without penalty.
Okay, all right. Excellent. When, I'd like to, I don't remember the exact number, but initially when we were presented with going down this path, I believe the number was higher than the 2% savings, but now we're at 2%. What was that number previously?
We've always been hovering around the 2 to 3% range.
2 to 3%? Okay. Is this 2%, is it guaranteed?
The 2% was was per the direction of our board of directors as essentially that minimum percentage discount that we need to achieve. We'll always continue to try to find more discounts where we can, given energy rates and all of those things.
Could it not be a savings? Could it go up?
We would have to, we've done a number of pro formas right now. We obviously can't guarantee anything given energy markets and all that, but we've been running, I think we've got 7, 8 pro formas in, assessing the electricity market along the way, and every single pro forma that we've provided all show that 2% savings is doable.
Okay. Are there instances where, in California, where it has not worked, that they went in with the idea of savings but ended up having to pay more?
So there are 19 operating CCAs across the state, about 152 cities. Not a single city has opted out of a CCA, and no CCAs have failed, for lack of a better word.
Okay. One of the items in here, it was talking about a renewable option. I believe it's the choice plan, and it talks about customers and businesses, or residents and businesses. Is that they, like, use, an individual household makes the decision as to whether or not they want to be renewable, or is it the entire city that needs to vote? Where does that come from? How is that decided?
Great question. Each customer would have that option to choose the rate that they join. So we have the choice plan and the choice plus. The choice is essentially the default rate that everyone will, that rate that reflects Edison. Everyone will have the option to opt up to the choice plus plan if they so desire, residents and business owners.
Appreciate you guys doing the survey as well. There were residents that did not like this. My understanding, if I remember correctly, is that if the city opts into this, then everybody is automatically opted in. That residents that don't want to be part of this have to opt out. Is by doing that, so they're automatically part of the program. Is there a financial, do they get hit financially if they opt out, or figure out after the fact that they're in and that they want to opt out?
No, if a customer opts out, they can do so at any time with no financial obligation to themselves or the city.
The flip side of that is I've heard that there may be costs from Edison saying, hey, you guys are not in our program anymore, and we bought this energy. Who's going to pay for that?
Edison would be required to take all of those folks back, also at no cost to the city if they opt out of WC back to Edison. There's no additional charge for them to join Southern California Edison.
Okay, but I've read in the paper a while back talking about Edison trying to figure out how to recoup the costs of them, of these programs starting. And how is that, where is that now?
My apologies, I understand your question now. So we're talking about the exit fees. So Edison has purchased a number of contracts, electricity for customers that would essentially be migrating over to WCE. There's an exit fee as part of all of the pro formas that we've run, as part of all of the rates. And even with these exit fees that would be borne per residents moving over to WCE, that would be paid. That's all included in their pro formas. That's all included in the 2% savings. So that's kind of, we have been modeling and been tracking that as well.
Okay, going back a little bit to a previous question, and I'll phrase it differently. And thank you for that answer. But residents that don't want to be part of the program, what is the process of either becoming part of, assuming the city votes on it, for residents in the community? What is the process of becoming part of WCE or choosing not to be part of WCE for the residents?
So I'll kind of tackle the folks that don't want to be part of WCE first. As part of that notification that I mentioned in my presentation, 2 months prior to launch, as is state law, we would notify, physical mailers would go out to all of the customers, notifying them of this. At that point, they can inform us that they would not like to be enrolled in WCE, so they would never come over in the first place. Otherwise, come launch date, everyone that has not opted out will be enrolled in WCE, after which time folks can still choose to opt out at any given time, again, with no financial obligation to themselves or the cities that they're in.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional council comments? A lot of questions, good questions.
You asked all my questions too.
Actually, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I did have one. Is there an anticipated impact on the costs based on what the state's doing to go 100% electric? And is this something that's going to be even more beneficial to us or less?
Just given the fact that all of the folks are playing in the same market, I think whether it would be a positive or negative impact, everyone would be impacted the same way. So it'd be kind of a no net, it would be net neutral essentially, because Edison is in the same energy market that we would be in. But us being able to provide that additional option for folks at 100% rate, well, could assist in getting to that goal line quicker.
Thank you. I actually have a question for staff. Assuming this does get approved and go out, and obviously you're gonna do all the mailers and put all the information out, but I can imagine there's gonna be a huge amount of traffic coming to City Hall in regards to this question. People that, even as much you put out there, there's people that are not gonna know about it, but they're just gonna drop on them. Is staff ready for that type of traffic that's gonna happen? There's gonna be a lot of questions on this.
We will be working with Western Riverside COG on a strategy to deal with that as that approaches. So we will figure that out.
Okay. I have no questions either as well.
Do you mind if I add to that? We'll have a call center as well to help mitigate the calls and that traffic.
Cool. Awesome, thank you. Seeing there's no further discussion, would then like to ask for a motion and a second.
So I move.
Second.
Councilmember Yao?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore?
No.
Councilmember Tesari?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Erica, I kind of see you looking back for what was the motion? Was it okay?
Motion's fine, I'm just scrolling between parts of the packet on my tablet.
No, okay, perfect. I was looking, it's like, okay, I'm sure I got that right. Okay, thank you guys so much. All right, we will now move to item 9.2, the Urban 3 presentation. I see that Joe is here now as well too. So Brian, would you like to introduce us.
Yes, have a good evening. Tonight before you, we have back before us Joe Menicozy from Urban 3, and you authorized a contract to do some more detailed analysis on our yield productivity. Western Riverside COG, you might want to hear this presentation because it's a lot of your, Rick Bishop, you might want to hear this presentation. I'm just saying if you want to watch it, it'll be interesting.
He's like, I have dinner plans.
But you can go if you want. Yeah.
You got to share.
It might be interesting. So we have Joe here, Joe Menicozy, who's a planner, an architect, economist, multidisciplinary individual. He'll tell a little bit about his background and bring you back up to speed, but then we're going to get into how Eastville fits into the Western Riverside COG economic market and how our revenue per acre is occurring in our city. So, and we've met with a number of developers that are developing in our community and shared this with them, as well as the fire department, because the fire department revenue stream is off of property taxes, and so that's an important revenue stream to be looking at as our assessed property taxes are up over about $10 billion in our community. This presentation will also jump into the potential of the Leal Master Plan and how that can fit in with our community. So
Mayor, councilors, thanks for having me. My name is Joe Menicozy, and I'm the principal of Urban 3. I did a presentation here, I think it was like January, on the general concepts. I'll go through the beginning parts of this again, just for members of the audience that haven't seen this before. Let's see if I can get the clicker to work here. It just worked a second ago. Something. So let's see. So I'd call cities, looking at cities as a form, this clicker is not going to work. Well, I kind of feel weird standing right here in front of you like this, but I don't need a cookie. I'm good. Yeah. It keeps on popping out. What did you do back there? You cut me off. Good. Did it unplug from back there? There we go. Okay. So when I talk about cities, I'll talk about cities as a form of DNA, like I have a DNA. And so this is me when I started my life, and this is my path, right? So I'll be my grandfather, whether I like it or not. There's not a lot I can change that, or more importantly, I'll be this guy, my father. So I don't know how far this will go. I kind of feel weird standing right there. Your dais. Yeah, but so I'm Italian. There's a lot I can't change in that, and my family has a predisposition of heart disease. So there's things that I have to do in myself to basically avoid that. And we all do this. We all look at our family members, and we have that conscious idea of where we're going. And some of these habits are great, and some of these habits are not so great that happen with us. So if I can talk, I'm going to go through a lot of stuff about Eastvale. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff about cities. But there's that concept of where you aiming to be in the future. What city do you have in mind? As y'all talk about a lot of decisions you make, there are role models out there that you can look at, good and bad. So in Asheville, where I'm from, we look at Atlanta as a negative role model, even though it's many times our size. We're not going to be Atlanta for centuries, but there's paths, there's heart attacks that it's had that we can avoid. So Asheville, I used to work for this real estate developer company called Public Interest Projects. It was a for-profit real estate development company. And was that a different one? Okay. You all are wealthy in clickers. This is amazing. No, it's not going to do it. So with public interest projects was Julian Price inherited a bunch of money, put $15 million into a real estate development company. And our job was doing the downtown revitalization stuff. 75% of our money would go into sticks and bricks, and 25% would go into businesses. So we'd actually help entrepreneurs at the ground floor. This is one of our buildings before, and this is after. And these are apartments. We worked with a local bookstore that was just a couple doors down and grew her up in our space, basically helping an entrepreneur grow in a larger space than what she could ever realize, but having the faith in her to be in our business. But one of the things, and we talked a lot with developers in the development community, you'll hear from people about what's the market? What does the market want? These are 400 to 500 square foot apartments. And one of the things that we typically do is, I'll ask this audience, who in this room would live in a 400 to 500 square foot apartment? Show of hands. Let me change the question. Who in this room has lived in a 400 to 500 square foot apartment? And that's our market. Basically, there are people, we've all had this opportunity in our lives. We're either new to town, recently graduated, recently divorced, whatever, that there are 90,000 people in our city. There's only 26 apartments. Surely these are going to fill up. And they did. They've been 99% leased up ever since. So it's finding that place in the market that isn't being met. That's an opportunity. But what we really saw is this inability to have a conversation about data. Here we are as downtown developers doing work and seeing our community talk about things politically or with biases or the way that they want to behave or what I want without seeing what the context of a city is. So for Asheville, what we try to do is talk to folks about, well, if we're a real estate developer at $15 million, what are you all worth? What's your city worth at a taxable value? So your city's taxable value is $10 billion. So even though we're a real estate developer inside my city's worth $14 billion. So y'all are the board of directors for a $10 billion real estate development company. How do you cash flow? Where does your money go? How are things operating? What's the cost of stuff? So if we're asking these questions as a $15 million company, shouldn't you all? And if you look at the word incorporate in the Oxford Dictionary, it says to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. There's very little difference between us as a real estate developer and you all, other than you all are an elected body, board of directors, where we're a private entity where we own the business. And it's not just your city, it's y'all are shareholders in Riverside County, the state, our country. You know, Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. I'm such a nerd, I'm like looking it up, and there's the US title and code right there, if anybody wants to look that up at home. We're listed as a federal corporation. Now, it's not to say we're a capitalistic corporation, we're a social corporation. We're all in it together as shareholders. So a citizen is essentially a shareholder in a corporation that has to cash flow. And you all are making those decisions about what the community's public purse is going to pay for. So my city at 14 billion is like 6 times the value of Ted Turner. Does Ted Turner like wake up every day and just look at Facebook and that's how he's making his decisions? Of course not. Now you all are accountable to being voted into office, but ultimately you have these financial decisions to make. So my city is a finite boundary of land. It's actually more so for you all. You all are hemmed in. We have a little bit of land. Our state has made it illegal to annex, but we actually have the opportunity should the state laws change. But you all are hemmed in by other municipalities. So those acres that you have are all the acres you got, right? So when a farmer looks at the land, the farmer is going to make economic choices based on the acres that they have. And that's land productivity. So if y'all know any farmers, what they typically do is they're looking at the cash flow on that land, what the crop yield is per acre, the water per acre, the labor per acre, and they're doing economic models before they till the soil. So this is one of our buildings that we rehabbed, ground floor retail, second floor office, and upper story residential. The city did the streetscape project, so thank you, city, for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and the street tree. I mean, we were actually accused that that was a subsidy at our front door. And we're like, all right, well, the whole world can walk on it, but I get it. You know, it's like it is in front of our project. But we took the taxable value from $300,000 to $11 million. So what the community got is you got 3,500% more taxes on a property that we owned. We were paying taxes before, but now that we renovated that building, the taxes shut up. So, you know, do you have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? This isn't our money. This is our community's money. Go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. I don't care. And people, when they saw that, they're like, well, Joe, that's cute and everything. Great joke, but it's $11 million. We've got this Walmart over here at $20 million. And it's like, fair enough, that's a lot more valuable than our building. But it took 34 acres of my corporation to make that happen. Our building's on 2/10 of an acre. So it's really an apples to oranges comparison if you start using those big numbers. Let's break it down to a per acre analysis to have apples to apples to see what's going on. So per acre, our building is producing $634,000 an acre in taxes versus their $6,000. Per acre, we're producing double the retail taxes. You know, I show this to people and like, there's no way that that's true. And I'm like, this is data. You just pull the numbers, put them up, apples to apples. This is what it is. Residents, we've got 90 units of residential per acre. And sometimes some communities, I show this to people. I'm like, 90 units of residential per acre. Could y'all imagine if I showed up and I was going to bring a 90 unit an acre building to your town? Like, what train would you run me out of town on? But is that building that bad? I mean, it's been in our community since 1925. Jobs, we've got more jobs. So if you look at the whole history of cities and what we've been doing as humans for tens of thousands of years is we built in this pattern for certain reasons. They're incredibly economically efficient. Less infrastructure, more value, more stuff on less property, right? Some people ask me, they're like, they take away from this that somehow I have a problem with Walmart. And they're like, dude, what's your problem with Walmart? Why do you hate Walmart? And that's not the point of this slide. The point of the slide is to understand things in an analytic way that you have an apples to apples comparison. And in fact, I presented at the International Association of Assessing Officers conference, which makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man. It's like the squarest conference ever. This guy, I mean, if you can imagine hanging out with 2,000 assessors, this guy was presenting, and he presented spreadsheet after spreadsheet on how cheap Walmarts are. I'm in the back of the room watching this all go down, and I'm like, this is awesome. I mean, think of how efficient that is. 3,000 assessors in one room, and in one meeting, you're getting all of your property taxes lowered. It's real simple. If you have a cheap building, you pay low taxes. If you have a tax system based on property value, there's a perverse incentive for me as a developer to build a low-value building in your community. And so, why wouldn't you do that? But I went up to the microphone afterwards and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he immediately shot back, 15 years. We'll be out of that building in 15 years, maybe 20. We designed the building to depreciate it as quick as possible, build another one, depreciate it down. What's important to us is the distribution center and having the goods flowing in the area, but the buildings we don't care about. That's it. So these buildings come to you when you say that there's a market, the market wants the Walmart. Realize that there's a cash flow exchange that we're making in that promise. So the question for y'all, is it worth the exchange? Is it worth it for you to get lower taxes out of that to get cheaper goods? The average Walmart, and y'all can call, I know you don't have one in Eastvale, but you can call Riverside or Corona. The average Walmart consumes more in police services than it pays in property taxes. That's a fact. And again, that's their business model. So, you know, that'll last like the life cycle of a cat, 15 years. I'm a dog person, it's a joke, and just move on. So these are all just ways, right now I'm laying the groundwork for talking about productivity. This isn't complex math, and we all already do this. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? We'd all be driving F-150s if that were the case. And you'd say to me, Joe, that's stupid, all tanks are different sizes. We say miles per gallon. Okay, miles per gallon. We should all be driving BMW Jettas. So it's the most efficient vehicle on this page. It's also the most dangerous, but it's cool. So we've done this all across the country, many cities in California, even with your Prop 13. And by the way, Oregon's got a more weird version of Prop 13 than you got, so count your blessings that you're not in Oregon, and so does Michigan. But here's the, taking all of the data, for every dollar of county single family that somebody out in the county is paying to the county per acre, their brother and sister in the city is paying about 5 times that. So remember, y'all are paying Riverside taxes through the system. Here's Walmart, here's the mall, and this is a 2-story building. This is a 3-story building, this is a 6-story building. So I'm not putting like a high-rise or anything that's above high-rise code in here. But what's crazy is you see that as you stack stories, you see this exponential jump up the bar chart. And it's just kind of mind-blowing. So back to Asheville for a second. This is my county, 350 square miles. This is a big park right here, this big gray blob. That's part of Mount Mitchell State Park. The Blue Ridge Parkway comes through town, and this is Mount Pisgah. So those 2 parks are non-taxable. So just to be crude about it, parks don't give me money. I don't care about it, right? Not taxed. Green is low value, purple is high value. So this is low value and high value down here, right? So this is the Biltmore Estate. That's America's largest house, the Vanderbilt Mansion. When Bill Cecil shows up at one of our council meetings, his house is worth $100 million. And, you know, we all genuflect and thank him for his time because he's a very valuable person in our community. But it's sort of not fair because his house is 180,000 square feet and he's sitting on 2,000 acres of land. He's got the biggest part of our portfolio. So rather than total value, this is a map of value per acre, and here it is in 3D. So we use this in Asheville because I've got friends that live out in the county. They literally call our city a cesspool of sin, and we're like, really? How about the money we give you in the county? You know, so this is, if you can guess where downtown is, it's pretty easy to see it. It's like, boom, here it is. And yet I've got friends out here in Fairview that think they pay a lot of taxes. And, you know, their relative example is who they know further out. And it's just like, no, you need to see what we're paying because we're all paying county taxes. 6 mills go to the county in my tax bill. And we can also see my little sister over here in Black Mountain, and we can see its little downtown right here too. The tallest building in Black Mountain is 3 stories, and you can see it pop up right here. So for you all, we did the same type of analysis. Could we look at your county that way? We'll start with your county is kind of big. It's actually exceptionally large. And you had 800,000 parcels, so it was kind of crashing our computer. And we talked with Brian, we're like, we're just going to chisel out a little piece of your community. So we cut that piece out right there. It looks kind of like a distorted version of Italy. You know, well, in our office, we called it the chicken leg, but I don't think you want to use that either. But anyway, we've got 74% of your county is non-taxable. So we're just like, well, the rest of it, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It's just not a significant sample set. So just for your study area, and it's a pretty big area. To put it in comparison, it's about half the size of Rhode Island. So that's still a large area that just goes down to Temecula, down to 15. So here's the sample set. And again, this is total value. So, you know, you see the parcels that are large pop up in hot purple right here. But again, that's not per acre. This is total value. When you do per acre, you get a different view of your community. And here it is in 3D. So you can see with Eastvale, it's basically a table of value. And that's all your residential popping up at that heat. Your residential is outperforming the residential in around Riverside for the most part, as well as Temecula around the downtown. South of Temecula does all right as you get towards San Diego, I guess. But you don't have a purple mountain like Riverside or Temecula. But your housing is basically pulling what Canyon Lake is pulling. You see the heat. I mean, basically, it's the way that we look at it from that perspective. From your city, again, this is total value of your city, and the finger that pops up is all purple. When you that one, I don't know. When you do that per acre, this is how it pops up. And here's the city in 3D as you kind of zoom in a little bit closer. It does pretty much fall down on the large tracts. Now, in defense of those tracts, though, I think the data is, I don't know when the assessment happened with the transactions with some of those buildings. So we might have to refresh that a little bit, but it still won't pop up that much. The site that we're currently sitting in, the Eastgate parcel, this is total value per acre. And so to run through some examples, the other thing is also taxable, non-taxable. You know, just keep this in check about what you have as non-taxable land. This property is not non-taxable. You're actually paying rent, but you've got about 19% non-taxable in your city, which is kind of on the low side for a city. But you also don't have large land consumers like a university or a big hospital or something like that. And this tract is the only non-taxable stuff is basically the right-of-way by the highway. Some examples, just to go through like as a windshield survey of some ingredients that make your place. The Walmart's pulling about 1.4 million an acre. And I'll go ahead and keep the Walmart on the bottom of the slide down here as like a control subject. Just so we call it the Big Mac index. It's like basically everybody's got a Walmart. So what's a big box do? It's about 1.4 million. Your Home Depot is a little bit less than that. We call this the Yogurt Land Strip. That's about 1.4. That's a little bit above a Walmart. Targets typically do better than Walmart's. This is at 1.8. This is typically what we see. Target doesn't harass the assessors as much as Walmart does. Walmart's very litigious about their assessment, and Targets typically don't fight it, and they also have a higher value in their buildings. This is the Bergrim Strip. It double a Walmart now at 2.7. The TJ Maxx all the way down to the Kohl's. We had to like stitch two pictures together. That's 2.8 million an acre. The Smart and Finals at 3.3 million an acre. And the movie theater behind us is 3.4 million an acre. Now, what was interesting is that, and this is kind of a little mind-blowing, this is in Riverside at Magnolia and Van Buren. This is actually more potent than the movie theater. So there they are. Those are the numbers. You know, and I think a lot of this is, I'm putting these up there because we all have biases about what we think a city is, and we don't check the data. So this is just, it is what it is. This is the data. Go ahead.
So the one on Van Buren there, up above, the second story, is that the difference?
Probably. Second story, density. There's a lot more land coverage. You don't have as much land spent on parking lots. A parking lot's a land subsidy, basically. And it's real simple. It's what's the economic value of building a square foot of asphalt? So the assessor's going to, actually, you know what? Let me show you this real quick. Sorry, that's actually a very important point. And I'm glad you caught that. In Peoria, Illinois, they told us they had a parking problem, their downtown, as we were doing their study. And so we measured it. And here's their water in their downtown. Here's their green space. Here's their streets and sidewalks. Here's all their surface parking. Here's their buildings. And of those buildings, these are parking lots, parking structures. So I said to them, I'm like, look, you don't have a parking problem, you've got a perception problem. And there's an exchange when you ask for parking. So these are actually the numbers for Peoria. There's about 1,200 square feet of building per person in Peoria and 2.5 parking spaces per person. So they have a space in front of their office, in front of the grocery store, in front of, as you drive around and use your city, think about every time you park your car, there's a space for you. So that costs money. When the assessor goes out there, the assessor assesses the value of the building at about $35 a square foot. These are actually their numbers, and parking's about $1.50. Your liability of what you own as a city is going to cost you $9 a square foot in front of each of those properties. So as a corporation, you've made a promise to access that real estate. You've put the infrastructure there, or someone did. You also have a fire department, you have other services, a city attorney, that you've promised to those properties. Yet when you run the numbers on this, the parking is paying 27 times less taxes than the building, right? So the cost is going to be $9 a square foot in front of the building, $9 a square foot in front of the parking. So when did we all have a public meeting to decide that parking is going to be 27 times less of value? Right? I mean, that's basically what's going on, is there's a subsidy that's put into the land. Go ahead.
What if it was pay parking?
If it's paid, but
I'm mostly joking.
Well, I mean, not in the case of Peoria, it's not paid. You just roll up onto a parking lot. When you look at this downtown, the reason why it drops off around downtown is because there's a lot of parking around it. When you go out to the burbs, the reason why they're so flat is because there's a lot of parking out there. So we bake that into the system, and I really don't care. It's their community. They can do whatever. I just want them to be conscious of these choices. Financially, when you do the whole county this way, and you take all the buildings in the county and put them side by side, this is the footprint that they need for an entire county's worth of buildings. So they don't need to use that whole county. And I know, hey, Joe, I'm not some crazy European. I don't want to live that close to somebody else. I need to stretch out a little bit. Well, you have to park that, and you have to get roads to that stuff. So when you run the numbers, they actually have more land dedicated to parking than buildings. And then this is their liability. This is everything else: berms, buffers, backyards, farms, whatever. And these are their actual numbers. Let me do it on a per square mile basis. So they have about $1 billion of value per square mile of building and only 40 million of parking. This is the liability, and this is everything else. So the question for them at a financial level is, does the car stationary pay for the car moving? And when you have that shortfall, you have to go into your other bank account to pull money out of the value of your buildings to cover the nut on that parking. So that's the subsidy. And as long as you're making that choice that we want to pay for parking more than we want to have a daycare center or a park or a greenway, or just have a conscious choice about it and make sure you're writing down those costs. So that's, you caught the point of that slide. That's just to make that conscious for folks. I have to find my place again. So that's the reason the movie theater is actually more potent than those buildings by itself if it didn't have parking. But once you add in all that parking, it liquidates the value. The Starbucks in Riverside is more valuable than both of them at $5 million an acre, or about 4 times the Walmart. Well, sometimes there's good problems to have. This is a $9 million an acre of value. Both of these buildings are about $8 million an acre. The one on the right, that includes the parking. So a shorter building with its parking is actually more potent than the taller building. So a lot of times people say, well, you just want to have tall buildings everywhere. I'm like, no, just do the math and understand it first. Both of these are 14 million. And the Citrus Tower, of course, it's a very big building, very dense building, very potent at 28 million. So your housing, your Swan Lake mobile homes, around 300,000 an acre, starting around down there. Your average single family, just taking your whole single family across the whole system, is really potent at 2.8 million an acre, or double a Walmart. Your multifamily is also very potent. This is Homecoming at 5.2 million an acre, again compared to 2.8 for single family. Lots of times people believe their single family is more potent than multifamily, and we're just like, well, look at the numbers first. So this is 5.4 million, and this is the most potent buildings in your entire city, basically at 8.5 million an acre. So that's it. That's the top of your model from a potency standpoint. So your multifamily is pulling about 4 million of value per acre across the city on average. And there's a lot of discussion, y'all might be having this, about missing middle, that stuff that used to happen before we put our zoning codes in place. Actually, your county has a lot of these rich examples, and a lot of them are in Riverside. But buildings that you wouldn't expect, like these little bungalow courts, are pulling 1.4 million an acre. So there's old lessons that we have that in lots of cases they're illegal these days. This is a duplex at 2.4 million right here. Like, if you just drove by that, would you think $2.4 million an acre? Or double a Walmart? Yeah, and sometimes those smaller houses can be potent. They're also starter homes for young families too. We call these 4-packs, but it's a 4-plex apartment building. This was built in the 20s. I mean, it's seen better days architecturally, but it's pretty potent. It's double a Walmart, or things like this. So this is actually an architectural typology that's really indigenous to California. These Spanish Mediterranean kind of, was it the Beverly Hills 90120 type buildings? They're actually kind of cool that you have these. And also these other historic examples, sprinkled around Riverside. Thinking of Riverside as a grandparent that's already blazed a trail of building a downtown, they've also had a series of heart attacks that you can avoid. I hope no one's from Riverside in here, but things like this, these buildings are pulling, on the right, 3.6 million an acre, and there it is on an old postcard from 1940. This is kind of wild. This is a building built in 1886, sitting right here in this photo from 1920, and it's pulling 17 million an acre. So how is it that your great-grandparents had the foresight to leave this wealth behind for their grandkids? And that's the lesson I find from history. Of course, this thing's killing it at 14 million an acre. But Temecula has learned this example. They basically ripped off models of urban environments for their downtown. And these buildings are relatively new, but they're killing it at 14, 19, and 28 million an acre. So this building right here is pulling the same value as Citrus Plaza, and it's a 3-story building. Now what they did is the city took the leadership to basically handle the parking infrastructure to pull it off the private sector buildings. That's the exchange that happened. I won't go through this whole bar chart. I'll leave this for you all as a report. But this is basically a bar chart showing you all the stuff I just showed you. It's just a different way to look at the information. Blue is residential single use, red is commercial single use, green is mixed use. And you see as you mix those uses, it tends to rise up the food chain a little bit. So to show you some comparison, apples to apples, how much of this would equal that? A third of an acre of Starbucks would equal the 1.2 acre yogurt land. 5 acres of the Raincross would equal the 26 acre homecoming. And if you think of your land as a scarcity, as a unit, and how you use it from a cash flow standpoint, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck to be able to afford other services. So 2.5 acres of Metro at Main would equal the 10 acre cinema. Half an acre of the Truax building would equal the 10 acre Walmart. And half an acre of the Roach block in Riverside would equal, basically that one block would equal the 1.3 acre Bergam strip. A third of an acre of Romano's would equal the 1.2 acre yogurt land. 9 acres of those shotgun houses would equal 11 acres of Home Depot. And 1 acre of the Temecula front blocks building would equal the 10 acre Target. So again, apples to apples. So there's taking the buildings off the land and just looking at the land value per acre. There's some weird things that are baked into the system I just want to make you familiar with. Out parcels tend to be valued higher per square foot per acre than the bigger parcels next to it. There's a bias baked into the system that the assessor gives a discount for large tracts of land. That because there's less people that can afford the bigger parcels, but that's not, your cost doesn't work that way. You have more services, more frontage committed to those properties, and the property owner is getting a discount. So just be aware of that, and we see that in the system, that the out parcels are much more potent than the big parcels. The other thing with looking at the land value, obviously, if you build an amenity like Canyon Lake, you see how the value rises to the crust, which is, we'd all know that somebody's got a lakefront property is going to have more value in their property than somebody who's right across the street doesn't, right? But check out what's going on when you make a downtown. So when you make a downtown, you're actually putting value in the dirt that is realized just in the, again, there's no buildings here. So making a downtown is like making a lake. Did y'all get that? And I know that y'all are in conversations about where do you put a downtown and what do you do? And you're going to have to go through a lot of effort to make that happen. So bear in mind, the prize is you make value with that, but it is a hard effort to get there. We did your retail analysis. Obviously, you've got a couple tracks that really shine. But this one is one of them. But bear in mind, keep it in perspective of the property value. There's a trade-off that happens when you have big boxes. You don't get as much value in the dirt. So this is blue is the retail sitting on top of the property value. And you see that this is the block that we're currently sitting on. It's basically 50-50 retail to property tax. If you just go across the street, you see more of the value in the property and less in the retail because there's all that residential behind it. So you actually can increase the value. And a lot of people get distracted with when you see retail numbers, you're just like, that's exciting, that's a big number, but we miss the trade-off in the property tax. And I'll give you an example of one of the things that small environments in small retail can add value to you. This is Durango, Colorado. Their cities run off retail tax. Their counties get all the property tax. So this is the downtown part popping up in property value. This is the mall, the Home Depot, the Walmart's all down here. And when you're on the retail, you still see that downtown still shines. They have a lot of small independent retailers in their downtown, small space. And with that, you get high yield. And it's something that's kind of counterintuitive, but like these two guys gave us their books. Peter has a bookstore and he likes to talk about honey. And Tim has a coffee shop and he sells kitchen stuff for some reason. But here's the land consumed out of the two of them compared to the Walmart. Here's their property tax production and their retail tax. So this is their numbers compared to the Walmart's numbers. Who would have thought that a bookstore and a coffee shop was 15 times the potency of property tax and 5 times the retail production? So these are their numbers. Now let's talk about jobs. So this is the first layer of economics. Let's ask the second layer of economics. Who's paying their retail employees more per hour? The mom and pop businesses or the national chain? probably the mom and pop. It could be even just a quarter, but small businesses tend to pay their employees more. Now let's ask the next layer of economic question. Who's hiring the local attorney, the local ad executive, the local accountant, the right side or the left side? So as you think about the costs of doing smaller spaces and what you hear from pushback from people that work in the retail environment, they're advocating on behalf of national change and national tenants. The small businesses don't have that advocacy ability because they're too busy with their small businesses. So seek out the numbers as you go forward. Also the roads or the retail, and we did this in Lancaster, California. They were really proud. This is what's going on with their retail taxation. And they're like, wow, we're back to pre-recession. This is awesome. And we said, hold on a minute, adjusted for inflation, this is what it really looks like. So you're still $2 million in the hole. What we haven't been paying attention to in the retail world since the recession is where have the retail transactions gone? They've shifted to Amazon, they've shifted to internet sales, and lots of consumer behavior has changed in the last 10 years. People buy less stuff. Now what's crazy, don't do what Lancaster did. As they were dropping in retail sales production, they added more retail square footage into their community. And we're like, are you following what's going on here? Why would you add more retail square footage when you're sucking wind with transactions? So they've seriously pulled back the reins on allowing more retail to come into their community. But they basically overbuilt. There's literally a Walmart built right across the street from an empty Walmart. That's not good. We did your employment analysis. You don't have anything that really pops up. You retain 7% of your community lives and works in Eastvale. 20% of your community goes to Orange County. But for the most part, you're pretty split across your community. You just kind of scatter into the wind for employment. Now, this is a good opportunity as well if you want to think from building jobs. Where are these folks going, and can you bring jobs here rather than scattering your community out? Can you retain some and grow that Eastvale number up? Is there a target you could hit where you want to retain 15% of your community? We just threw you up against your brothers and sisters in the county to show you where you're doing better and where you have room for improvement. You're doing really well in the average value per acre range. You're well above everybody else. And you can see that on how you're built out. You don't have these kind of saddles of green space on here. But your top VPA, the top of your model, is the lowest in the sample. You're at about 8 million at the top of your model, while the others are at 28 million, 18 million, and 27 million. Which leads to the downtown analysis. Kate Raybon was our analyst on the project, and she had just done a couple places in Minnesota. And she's sort of a nerd, and she's like, how is it that your county is topping out at 28 million and Minneapolis in Hennepin County is topping out at 250 million? Their entire county is 1.2 million, your county is 2 million. How could you have more people in a county and less value? And so we made a little heart monitor to show you. Now the other place, Rice County, at the other end, the entire county's population is 65,000, and they're peaking out higher than you. So there are lessons in small places and big places. This is also an opportunity. How can you build that spike in your community? Now, you're not going to be the prime. Los Angeles would be like your prime or something, but you could be a smaller mountain further out. So as you look at this model and say, how do you make that opportunity happen? Brian asked us to look at the Leal site, which is that box right there. Right now, it's just a big field. The first thing that we did was a really crude cookie cutter to kind of, we threw like all these different typologies in, but before we did that, we did a quick little test. So here's the Leal site, and we just dropped it over Temecula and just grabbed all of that. That's the power of using the computers. We can just grab all those parcels and rubber stamp them into your community. But this is what happens when you do that. That's if you had downtown Temecula here, and as well like some residential neighborhoods. So it's not just the downtown. You're building some other stuff. You go from this to that. Does that make sense? It's a big pop of up to 237 million of total taxable value from 47. This is if you do the same thing with Riverside. There's a lot more non-taxable land in downtown Riverside. But then I just do on the left is a breakdown of the different land uses we threw in there. So some high-density hotel, or high density housing, hotels, civic space, a lifestyle center, some commercial, parks, parking.
It should be noted that these are part of the Leo Master Plan. It's kind of a low, medium, and high version of the land uses from the Leo Master Plan.
Yeah, think of it as your porridge is too cold, too hot, or just right. Like where does it fit in here? And we're just throwing some ideas out there. This is medium, and then this is high, where you have more commercial and less residential. So here they all start side by side. So right now the site's worth 46 million of taxable value. At a low end, it's about 500. Medium is 600. And high is 700. These are all conservative estimates. It could be much more than that if you wanted to, if the developer was in the interest of going in that direction. But what it takes is the average value per acre from $300,000 of your city, and it starts to pump you over 5 million. So that one project is a sizable project, and it could be a sizable boost to your community. But it's also going to take work to get there. So hopefully I'll have this all as a report for you all. You know, if you're not measuring this stuff, you can't manage it. If you don't know what you're aiming for, you can't get there. So do the numbers and think about how to balance those costs. When people say there's a market for a certain thing, realize there's a transaction in that happening. You know, for low density or to not have congestion anywhere. It's like, well, great, yeah, there's a cost to that. There's a lane mile that you have to add that's going to cost you all money to serve that. Make sure you can pencil that out. I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. That would make me happy, right? But there's a cost to that. We're on the same page. I got more facial hair though. Yeah. So this is all spatial analysis. This joke doesn't work for people under the age of 35, but and you know, you all are 3 times the Rams in value. Like, think about that. Your county is like 40 times the Rams. And I can tell you that Stan Kroenke knows Todd Gurley's towel bill. I can tell you the cups in our nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. To know what a lane mile retrofit is or what it's going to cost for you to continually fix it, you need to be conversant with that with your community. So we call this geo-accounting. Just put the numbers on a map, understand it, find a way to talk with your citizens about what things cost when they ask you that they want to have another lane mile so that they don't have traffic. It's like, well, yeah, there's an exchange that you have to pay for that. And like your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat, right? Your accountant cares if you can afford a boat. So these are your choices that you have to make. I'm merely an accountant showing you where the money is and isn't, and we're doing the math. So thank you.
Joe, before you go, there was that slide, 57% of our residents work outside of Eastvale. The remaining percentage, are those people that actually are employed or work from home in Eastvale, or is it just residents that are not working?
No, that's 7% of residents would be working in Eastvale. Would be like folks that work for the city that live here.
7%. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
They might work in the retail establishments or maybe at the warehouse or the Amazon warehouse.
So I asked them to do a geocache around Orange County, and what is it,
It's about 21%.
21% of our residents drive into Orange County every day, or that's where they commute for work. And you know, a lot of people say, well, we have a lot of people that go into Los Angeles, but that's really not true. Only 4% of our residents go into Los Angeles.
So I'm sorry, so the 57% of residents work outside of the locations in the pie chart?
Exactly, and that's,
Okay.
we don't, you know, it's like 10 people go to some random little place somewhere, you know, they just don't show up as a significant sample set. So Brian asked, could you just pull the Orange County ones, and what does that do? So again, this is all census tract data. We can give you access to the website that we use, that we pull all of this stuff. It's a great service called On the Map, and y'all could do that here with your staff.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions for Joe? Nope. Joe, I want to thank you for coming. You know, as we're looking at the Lil property and seeing what we can do with the Eastvale Gateway Center here, you know, information's power, right? And having this, and I'm a big fan of having this type of information and data to present to the developers, which I know we've already done. And just to continue this, because you don't want to go in blindly, obviously, to have that. So we appreciate the time you take to help empower us and to give us the appropriate information we need
Thank you.
to move forward. So thank you.
And the real reason why we're doing this is, as we look to be a resilient, sustainable, fiscally responsible community, we need to be valuing our land and how we develop our land. We are landlocked on all four sides by by 3 cities and a or 4 cities, but a freeway, a river, and a county line, and we don't have the ability to sprawl like Lancaster and create wealth by just sprawling, but they also create an impact because they build more roadways and they have to serve them, and they're not building infrastructure that supports or they're not building development that supports their infrastructure to get there. As we look to develop the Leo Master Plan and intensify the Eastville Gateway, or we look to develop any of the projects that we are developing, if we start looking at our land as a revenue per acre, we can identify ways to provide better services to our residents for a more cost-effective way. So he's got a lot of great stories and shared a lot of different development examples with developers over the last 2 days to really share how we can turn this upside down instead of just looking at it per use and how big is your gas tank, of how many miles per gallon are you getting out of your car, and it's a really good production. So it'll help as we look at our Eastville 20 general plan update, as well as developing the Leo Master Plan, and so and creating our downtown. And you saw, when I talk about an 80-to-1 return on investment, that we could be getting an 80-to-1 return on the Leo Master Plan if we develop it correctly. We could also get an 8-to-1, and one will help us perform services for the rest of the community, and the other will not. And so there's different development standards that we need to be looking at that could set us up for success in perpetuity, and we could help lead the way in Riverside County rather than fall to the wayside like some of the cities are struggling with because they did development in a different way.
Thank you, Brian. All right, we'll move on to the next. That was a receive and file, so we'll move on to item 9.3. We'll be actually taking this right back to you, Brian, discussion regarding temporary private use of the Alphalich property. It's 13200 Citrus Avenue.
Okay. This is, as our strategic plan looked at identifying ways to enhance fine dining opportunities for our community, I reached out to a chef named Chef Steve Brown from Cosecha, San Diego, and he does pop-up restaurants throughout the nation and world. He grows his own food down on a farm right on the California-Mexican border, Mexico border, and he came up and he looked at our Alphalich Citrus property at 13200, and he said, wow, it'd be really neat to do a pop-up dinner here because this is a really cool building that not too many people even know about in our community. And so we started the conversation about what would that look like. And he said, well, we could do ticket sales for dinners, and we could do something potentially in October or starting in late September, October for like a 2-week period, and do dinner seatings for like a 40-person dinner seating where you sell tickets to the dinner, and they'd be anywhere from like a 9 to a 24-course meal. And he's a gourmet chef that creates these amazing meals. But it'd be he sees the Inland Empire as a fine dining desert, and not a dessert, but a desert. And he would like to bring fine dining choices and options to the Inland Empire so that they could experience the fine dining, and it'd be an opportunity for us as a city to see, is there really a market in this region for fine dining, which he believes there is. He's actually a local guy from Redlands that has made it in his own right in restaurants. But it also gives us an opportunity as a facility manager to identify, could the Citrus property be used for something in the future after we build our city hall? And so this would give us like a 2-week pilot project to evaluate that, but it also give our residents something and the region something to experience when it comes to fine dining. And he would take care of all the expenses as far as having the ADA accessibility bathrooms and the food and the healthcare permits and everything that we would need. And we are looking into a fee structure for the use of the property, whether it's a profit sharing or just a flat rate. But that's where we're at right now. And he would like to get direction from council. Thanks, if you, he would like to get direction from council if this is something that we could market and do. He would take on all the responsibility for marketing the event, much like Tailgate Fest is doing on the Leo property. He would do that also for the Off-Lich property, and see what this could be now or in the future. And he was really interested in doing this with us, and he does it all over the country. And but he said, wow, you guys don't have any fine dining options even remotely close to your city, of the scale and magnitude that we could bring so that everybody could experience that in the Inland Empire. So with that, I will get feedback from council if this is something you would like us to help with a temporary use permit, and facilitate happening for our community.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian, for that.
The other thing is it could create an economic buzz for fine dining and recruitment. He's very well connected in the culinary profession. And one thing we're trying to do is put Eastville on the map for fine dining. And he has a huge social media following, and he's very connected with restaurants. So it would start to bring an attraction and a destination to help Eastville be put on the map for fine dining.
Perfect. Thank you. Mark, is there any public comment cards been pulled for this?
There's not.
And then I'll open up to council discussion. And I know, Jocelyn, you had, seemed like you wanted to make a comment first. We want to start with Joe. Comments?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the idea. And did he give you any ideas regarding costs that in some of his other endeavors that might be similar to this one?
Well, he's done dinners that range in the value of from $75 to $250 a plate. So, we were looking at, and that could be all inclusive of alcohol. It could be separate from alcohol. But we were saying, he said, well, we could probably put something together where we have a matinee where it might be 9 courses, and we might have a Friday and Saturday where we have 16 courses or something like that. And there might be a price difference for a Saturday lunch versus a Saturday evening or something like that. So we would definitely work with those. But if you had 40 people at just say $100 a plate, and you do 2 seatings a night, that'd be about $8,000 of gross revenue for him to bring that in. But then if we did a profit sharing of 5%, that'd be $400 or so, $400 to $800 of revenue for the city that we could use to do some projects around that property that need to be done. But it also kind of give us a test pilot of how we could use that property and some lessons learned as we move forward in facility management.
Did he give you an idea how many people he would accommodate?
He said it with the space that's over there, he goes to 2 tables of 20, and he likes to put them in rows because he does like kind of an entertainment chef stuff as well. So you'd be sitting with, unless you brought 40 of your friends, you'd be sitting with other people in like kind of a great family kitchen style experience.
Sounds pretty nice. I like it.
Councilmember Yao.
I really like the idea. With that being said, with and I know you have a lot going on. I don't want to add additional responsibilities on your plate, but I was just wondering if we could even recruit other pop-up restaurants to do the same thing, so we could maybe like have a series instead of a one-time thing.
We'd like to start with one as a pilot project just to see what it's like. But we could definitely explore that opportunity of how we use this property in the future. It's a temporary use permit for this. But if we started using it on a regular basis, we would have to do a little bit different use for the property. So I don't want to commit to doing something like that, but it's not out of the question, should this be wildly successful and the Inland Empire say, wow, Eastville, you're doing something super entrepreneurial to bring a food buzz to the Inland Empire, and we want more of this. Maybe it's something we come back to council and we talk about, do we do this and figure out how to use this property in different ways.
I actually have one question, and I know this is a concern also of the mayor's as well. We kind of need to be conscious of the price point that we're setting for this Cosecha restaurant, as far as what takes precedent after the fact. Like how much are we going to charge them to utilize that? And if this facility does turn into something where people are utilizing it for events, it just needs to be consistent. Again, I'm all pumped for the idea. I just want to make sure that whatever we're charging them to use the price point, that it's somewhat consistent with someone else were to use that site for something else later on.
Yes, I think that's a great point, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, the mayor brought up too, I'll give him the credit for it, but.
Okay, we'll
yeah,
give the mayor
fair
the
enough,
credit. I think with us calling this a pilot project and a temporary use permit, this is more of an exploratory thing than a precedent-setting thing. We can utilize this as an opportunity to see, is this the right amount? Is this effective amount? And then we can come back and do something even more concrete for precedent setting in the future. So we can work to do that.
Just to add on to that, under California law, charges by local agencies for the use of your real property don't have to be based off of a cost recovery model. They can be based off of what the market can bear. So in this context, obviously, as the first use of this property in this manner, the market isn't really established for it yet. And we've been drawing some comparables from other cities that have like historic homes or other sort of nice facilities that they rent out to see what they're charging, to kind of get the idea of what the market is on a facility that's really been used and intended to be used in this manner. But Alpha Lich at this point in time doesn't have a lot of the amenities that those facilities have. So we'd have to temper our expectations as to what the market is for this particular property as it in its current state. And then as improvements are made, or maybe tables and chairs are acquired or things like that, additional amenities are offered, then that would obviously increase the market value for the rental.
Well said, no, it's perfect, thank you. No, I love the idea. I think, as we further go down this road, I would make a suggestion that maybe we have 2 or 3 different platforms through this 2-week process. And what I mean by that is, have a price point of X amount of dollars that's on the lower side. I don't know what that looks like, but, 50 to within 100, and then maybe on a weekend, different type course meal. Maybe that's a 5-course meal. Then you go to a, 8, 9, 10, whatever, 13-course meal, and that jumps to 2. To gather price, I think it's good information to gather price points, right? And maybe that's only a 1-day thing, and see what sticks on, that those special nights where people are willing to spend more. And I think that's real solid data. So I guess we'll either have 2 or 3 different types of courses, and what types, and the price points be 3 different types of price points, and maybe do them on different days in that whole 2-week frame. Does that make sense? Or
So it does make sense. I don't want to tell somebody how to run their business and their business model and make a
Very
profit.
true. 100%.
So what I will do is I will strongly encourage him to identify different ways that people could step into this, whether it's a 9-course for one thing and a 16 and a 24 for another, or on Saturday at lunch. The alcohol isn't included, and it's Saturday evening the alcohol is included, or something like that, or the wine parties. The wine parties. Somebody. Please silence your cell phones. That's where. But he did identify that, and we even thought about having some fun competition within the community for some kids to recommend why their parents, teachers, coaches, mentors, or whatever should receive a gift certificate to this or be a giveaway competition or something where somebody could do something like that. So he's open to a lot of different ways to look at this. But I think it's a great way to really get into the food scene and help the food scene from San Diego and the Los Angeles market come out to the Inland Empire.
I think the only other thing I wanted to bring up too, and then we can kind of go to a motion here, is that I think, it's everything that's transpiring at the Hamner Place and just this awesome kind of dining experience, and then you add this to the equation to kind of test pilot and see what the market bears, and then, as we're talking about reestablishing this facility and the Leo property, these are the type of things that you need that boost when you're, restaurants and food really bring a lot of revenue and attraction to cities, and it's kind of your forefront of downtown areas, and that's what we're trying to create. It's all inclusive. So in doing these things, it's very innovative, and at the peak of it, you're really gaining great information from it. So I commend the idea. It's definitely out of the box, and appreciate that. So.
Yeah, it goes along our 3 E's: being effective, efficient, and entrepreneurial.
It's a good Brianism right there. Great job. I guess we'll be solicit a motion in a second.
So I move.
Councilmember Yao?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorimore?
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari? Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Lene said she already wants a reservation.
There you go. Oh, Joe's gonna be there. That was a given, man. It's a given. All right. The next item, it will be the last item of our business items at 9.4. This is to approve the purchase of driver feedback trailers, and this will be presented by Gina.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, Mr. William Hensley is taking the podium and he will present the PowerPoint this evening.
Thank you, Gina. Good evening. So staff is requesting that council consider the purchase of driver feedback signs or trailers. The staff report was written for trailers only, but we're asking for you to consider another option. We'll go over here in a minute. Why look at purchasing driver feedback signs? There's been several complaints over the last few months. Mayor Pro Tem, the mayor have been involved with those. Citizen concerns include reduced reaction time of the drivers due to speeding. Children may dart out in the street, and the speeding driver may not be able to stop in time. The walkability of the streets because of the speeding, and not being able to safely back out of the driveway. The investigation process into a speeding complaint includes looking into what the speeds actually are out there. These driver feedback signs have options with them that include measuring the speed. You can program the signs so that they don't display, so that there's no reduction in speed initially, and then after a while you put the speed feedback on, so then there would be a reduction after that point, so you can measure what's actually going on out there. Feedback signs have been known to reduce speeds on a temporary basis or even in a permanent measure. The city currently has 2 trailer-mounted signs. Brian would say 1.5, because one of them is not operating too well right now, that are regularly in use. Are they effective? Mayor Pro Tem and staff met with some citizens, and we put the trailers out there after they complained, and they said that there was definitely a difference. Other agencies have installed them, and this slide shows that there is between a 5% and a 20% reduction in speed after the feedback signs have been installed. We currently have 12 existing stationary pole-mounted driver feedback signs mounted throughout the city, as shown on this map, and many of them are around school locations, which they also include the flashing lights to help attract the attention of the drivers. Here's a picture of our 2 existing feedback trailers, and one of them is on its last leg.
Yeah. Well, actually, one question. What is the size of that picture right there? Is it 2 by 3 Is that 2x3 or 4x5?
That is a 2 by 30,
Or 2x?
2.5.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So the options that we have looked at is a 2x4 trailer, which comes with a message board sign on there, so you can put different messages that are programmable. The larger, the more of a message you can put on there. So the 4x5 is a little more expensive, but you can put more of a message in terms of if you need it during emergency management or for other traffic control reasons. Options that were not included in the staff report, but came up later as we realized that there could be some, with the streetlights that the city now owns, we can place these same programmable messages a little bit smaller, the 24 by 30, which is the same size that we currently have. And those are the same size as the 12 that are throughout town. These are only $5,000 per sign. We talked to our current maintenance contractor, and they can move these around from one pole at city pole to another in 2 to 3 hours. So they're just as effective, but a lot less cost. And then we also looked at the cost of just purchasing a message board sign, so we can still have that capability. We'd store it at our fire station. The cost of a larger sign, a much larger sign, 4x8, is only $16,000. As opposed to the $20,000 for the smaller sign. So it's just an option for council to consider, or a couple options. The original options presented in the staff report was to purchase just the two 2x4 driver feedback trailers. It's going to be about $38,000. Or another option was to purchase one 2x4 and one 4x5, which is going to be $54,000. The third option presented was to purchase two 4x5. The larger is going to be $70,000. With the signs that we can move around and mount on the street lights, using those same dollar amounts approximately, we could purchase 5 of those signs instead of 2, along with one message board trailer for that $36,000. Option 2, the new option 2 would be we could purchase 7 of the feedback signs to move around the city, and one message board for $51,000, or we could purchase 11 and 1, or 8 and 2 message board signs. So those are the 4 options that our staff is presenting for your consideration. And that concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. I'm sure we might have a few questions, but before we do that, has there been any public comments on this?
No.
Perfect. Then I'll open up for discussion. Any council members want to discuss on this or questions?
What do you guys want? What do you think is going to serve the city best out of these packages?
I think because of the effectiveness of the message board signs, I think the more the better. I mean, there's a lot of complaints out there. We can leave them out longer for the various neighborhoods. So, I mean, I think my request would be to go with the number 4. It's also nice to have the message board sign trailers that can go out there for special events. That I know there's going to be more of those coming into town. So, I mean, that's a lot of money, I know, but I think that would provide us the most benefit.
And on number 4, where it says the 8, is that the ones? Those are the small ones that mount to the poles.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And do we have any idea where they're going to be placed? I know that you specifically requested that you would like to have 8 of them. Do we have in mind yet?
Sure. Yeah, there's at least 3 communities that would like to have them now. Remember the neighborhood or first neighborhood that we met with?
Well, you have Heartland's Peach Blossom that's used it a couple times. You have Willow Creek that we just met with.
Right.
And then you have, I want to say Orchard Park, that area. I just know them by the neighborhood watches. I don't know the names of the actual, but that's 3 just off the top of my head right there.
Yeah, we put them to use immediately.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have comments and questions, and just kind of coming from meeting with some of these neighborhoods, I think the use of this and why maybe this is important, I think it's something that our mayor brought up, not here to discuss it, but I think I might be able to kind of help us out, is the problem with it is a neighborhood will utilize that one or the half that's not working and use that one. And then there'll be a neighborhood that other neighborhoods like, hey, well, we could really use this because we have, the speeding issue in our neighborhood. People are driving, 38 plus in a 25-mile zone, right? It's a danger to our children that are playing in the streets. So then we can get data off these basically these signs. And on top of that, it kind of helps mitigate some of the issues. It kind of helps slow things down. And so there's just not enough to how many people want these. And so getting maybe an extra 2 would really help out a lot of the neighborhoods that are in need of it. And we can kind of go back and forth. And that's kind of the whole purpose of it. Just real quick, I don't know, LT, if you'd like to, any thoughts on this too? Maybe how this is kind of impacts your department as well as far as the information. Any comments that you'd want to make on this as well?
Well, based on social media, I think we have numerous places that would love to have them. But definitely it would help supplement our motor units from going out there and doing their own speed surveys. So any information we can get, it's beneficial.
Thank you.
It's an education and enforcement tool, and it's a reminder and awareness tool. We get a lot of requests for these things. And the challenge is when we get a request and we only have one trailer available and we have 3 people in front of them, it might be a month before we get the trailer out there. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how can we deploy units around the community a little faster and move them around, but also leave them there a little bit longer, just to remind people, hey, slow down in our community, speed kills. We have a lot of young kids in our family, in our neighborhoods, and just slow down a little bit. You're not getting anywhere any faster by driving fast.
Yeah, if just kind of my thoughts on this, if I don't know if there's a recommendation I would make on this is, as far as what options, I would just do the first option, 'cause that's what we're currently using and it's working and there hasn't been any problems. So I don't know if there's a need to spend more money on other stuff, but I think just to purchase the 2x4s, pretty much is what all we need to really help. I think I'm trying to read that right. That one's just hard to see. Yeah, the 2x4.
That's a great option.
It's simple, it's small, it's what we're already utilizing and it's working. We just need more of that.
Yeah.
Instead of going anything more robust, and that probably is not needed. It does the job.
Yeah.
That's just kind of my take on it, but obviously we'll have a vote on it and decide.
The 2x4s are fine. The only reason why we were starting to throw the 4x5s in there were if we wanted to tell a message out there, we could use those for message boards as well. And so they have dual purpose for emergency events or stuff that could be going on in our community that we need to deploy them for. So, the 2x4s are fine.
And just the other side note too, we're not using any general funds. This is all through Measure A. Yeah, it's all Measure A funds. I was gonna say gas tax from it, but it's Measure A funds. So just kind of food for thought when voting on it. One, yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if seen none, then we will. Oh, yeah, Councilmember, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna. Do you guys want some of these, the smaller, the pole-mounted ones? I mean, do they come? Are they going to work for us?
You get more for your value. They provide the same information, just it's a smaller sign. So for the same price, for $36,000, you can get 5 of the small signs and then 1 message board sign for that. So it's just more impact. That's the only reason we brought the other options to you. But the first option is fine too.
What are you thinking?
If that's fine for you guys, you're the ones that are out there doing it, handling the complaints. But if you feel that, these pole-mounted ones are an important tool to have.
I think they'll be just as effective. So you'll be able to put messages on them for the same price. We can have 5 of them deployed as opposed to 2.
And I'd be honest, I didn't see that option.
So maybe
I actually didn't see that option until you brought it up.
That's why I'm just maybe something like option 1 on the bottom 4.
On the new option 1. Yeah. No, that makes sense. As I'm reading, it makes sense.
It just gives us the ability to cover more territory.
Is it 4x8 message board sign or is that 4x5?
4x8.
It's a 4x8, but it doesn't have the speed feedback with it. So
okay. So what, would it be better to do a 2x4 with the feedback and do the pole mounted?
I mean, that's up to you. I mean, 4x8, the 4x8 would just be to get the message out there for special events and that kind of thing. You don't need to spend, see, a 2x4 is about $20,000 with speed feedback. So the 4x8 is substantially larger. You get more messages. If you're only putting it out there to give messages for special events and that kind of thing, so we can have five speed feedback and one message board sign that we can use for throughout the city. So that would be my recommendation.
Then that's what I would move approval of. Sounds like a motion.
Sounds like a motion. You got a second?
Second.
If I might, one fun thing. We have a motion and a second, but there was a instance a while back, and these signs really work. It's going up to 15, and they were having the auto speedway up in Fontana, and there was a sign just before you got to, I think the 10 or the 60, I forget what, and there was one of these trailers, and there was this huge backup of traffic, and everybody was looking to see what the sign said, and the sign said, "Traffic ahead." And and as soon as you passed the sign, it cleared up. It was amazing. So
There you go.
We'll try
The
that.
effectiveness. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. That was by Joss was the second. Do roll call.
Councilmember Yao?
Yes.
Councilmember Livermore?
Aye.
Councilmember Tesari?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plot?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And that was for the new options after staff report was published, number 1, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, for that too as well. Thank you for all that additional research. And just to commend Bill and Gina, they've been very involved in this whole process and been very effective to help do some outreach to the community. So
This will
thank you.
definitely help with public safety in our community.
100%. Okay, with that being said, we've made it so we're pretty much all the way through with this. We'll go to item number 10, city manager report and city staff reports. Brian?
I just have a 30-minute update here.
I was doing man, I'm doing pretty good.
I'm just kidding. As you heard tonight, the 60 swarm, eastbound 60 is gonna be a mess, enclosed, for the next 8 weeks, weekends. So avoid the 60 at all expense. The public safety, workshop, our community workshop is on July 30th. The Business Success Roundtable is during the day on July 30th. The National Night Out is August 6th at Silver Lakes. And we have another entrepreneurial effort by our city clerk for Passport Day on August 24th, where if you want to travel the world and get a passport, you don't have to make an appointment, and we'll do it on Saturday so you don't have to take the day off from work. You can come in from 9 to 1 and we'll have a line out the door. Just get there early and no, it's not free. We could do that like the first 5 and have them camp the night before. Just see if we're as popular as like Chick-fil-A or something. But that's gonna be a great event. And then I also wanted to share some update. We had a great Public Safety Commission meeting last night, and the Tailgate Fest promoters came and shared with the Public Safety Commission. There was a great dialogue there. And they are all on board to work with RSO and CAL FIRE to make this the safest, funnest, most fun event Eastville will ever experience, or to date, I should say, because we were going to have a lot more fun stuff planned in the future. And if you haven't seen, down on Sunset Boulevard in Santa Monica, a 5-story building has a big Tailgate Fest banner hanging on it. Every billboard, or there's hundreds of billboards throughout Southern California have Tailgate Fest, and it's all over the radio station saying, and if you haven't seen on the Instagram page for Tailgate Fest and our Instagram page, Raylan and a few of the other performers have already said, hey, we're going to see you in Eastville on August 17th, or we're going to see you in Eastville on August 18th. So their social media presence is putting a lot of connection to Eastville, so it's great. And then I just got some amazing news because, once again, we got our budget adopted the earliest in the state of California. And we are also award-winning budget corporation, as we learned earlier. the fire department will be staffing medic squad 27 mid-August. And so because we were able to give them approval to get that going, and we are in such hot demand to be serving our residents in our community, they had a line out the door for signing up for those medic squad truck service. And so they are excited to have that truck in service to provide better medical response in our community. So we are excited to have that on board. So I appreciate Chief Vike and Chief Tovar in making that happen and creating all the buzz in their culture and their environment too, that everybody wants to work in Eastville.
Thank you for the update. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that.
Hold on, one more, sorry. 29 more minutes. We mentioned earlier about Tim Steenson retiring, but just in case you see a new face around City Hall, Jerry, and I'm gonna butcher his last name, Arellano, right? Something like that.
Arellano?
Yeah, it's close enough. Jerry is a certified building official, plan examiner, and building inspector with more than 20 years of industry experience. He has a bachelor's degree in architecture and gained leadership and administrative skills while self-employed as a general contractor. So he did architecture school. He became a general contractor. Jerry is familiar with providing building inspection and plan review services to multiple municipalities in Orange and Los Angeles County. He has also served as building official and deputy building official in the cities of Mission Viejo and Rancho Santa Margarita. So he's kind of got the trifactor approach of multidisciplinary. Not only can he build it, he can inspect it, he can permit it, and he can design it. So it's kind of the trifactor in the building industry.
Jerry, welcome. We appreciate it.
Jerry's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move to item number 11, City Council Communications and Committee Reports. And we'll start first with the League of California Cities.
No news.
Okay.
There's nothing to report.
Okay. All right, what was going on over there? Were you guys, was that good?
They were happy I was quiet. That's
Wow.
what it was.
Wow. All right, well, we're gonna see how quiet you're gonna be, because SCAG is next.
All right.
Nothing to report.
Yeah.
Two meetings. There was the Legislative Communications Membership Committee that took place on Tuesday, 16th. It was the first of the new committee. It's a very large committee. It's largest that it has ever been, and it now consists of 20 people. Usually in the past it's been 10 or under. And so it made for a rather unruly start to meetings, or a little bit more unruly than usual, because in this committee, just background, the organization fleshes out deep political issues, specifically on legislation. So it was interesting. Thursday, 18th, SCAG had an executive planning meeting that took place, and this was the one that I had mentioned at our last meeting, and I'm holding from earlier today. We got this pin of the bear, and that meeting was up in Big Bear, so it was good. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing, in that we had our State of the City that night, so I was back for that, and a great State of the City, and that concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll move to WRCOG.
Nothing to report. We were dark last month and our meeting is next week.
Okay, and then we'll do the Riverside Transit Agency, and there's nothing to report of mine as well. We have our meeting tomorrow. And Western Community Energy, Todd is out, but obviously we just approved, so enough said for that, but I'm sure if Todd, when he comes back, he'll give it an update. Northwest Mosquito and Vector Control.
The district will be spraying this Friday between 2 and 6 a.m.
Okay. RCTC.
No meetings since the last meeting.
Okay. And now we'll do Western Riverside County Regional Conservation Agency.
Nothing.
Wow. And there's another part for JC's Parks Commission nor the Finance Committee. We will have our next Finance Committee, which will basically do an overview of the last 2 months. On city council communications, we'll just start to the left and just kind of move down. Joe, any comments?
Yes, I would encourage all of you to help support the Key Club at Roselle High School by supporting the Kiwanis Club for our event on the 24th. It's not required you show, it's just required you make a contribution. So
there you go.
If you, it's $15. Mayor Bootsma's got some tickets if anybody would like some. So help the kids, support the scholarship program.
All right, Jocelyn.
We just had, this earlier today, Councilmember Tesari and I, we toured the Diamond Bar City Hall and Library. So we did that earlier today. That was great. That was very helpful.
And Councilmember Yao is supporting Kiwanis Club. She purchased the tickets.
Yes, I did, although I still owe them $1, but yeah.
Clint, you have anything?
Great state of the city, both the first and the second one. From a work perspective, though, I don't know if we put it all into one day, I know that would probably kill some people, but in terms of planning, but I don't know if in the future, if we talk to the chamber, I'd love to get all opinions on this, of course, but for me personally, it would be easier to do everything in one day, but.
Yeah. I think we'd be open to any ideas for sure to see that. I think it's about combination, but there's a way we can do it for sure. Yeah, that was actually what I was gonna talk about. I thought this was an amazing state of the city, and kudos to everybody that was involved, every staff, everybody from the Chamber of Commerce. That was a very, very impressive. The feedback was nothing but positive. And the videos were incredible. So let's continue to just, that bar has been absolutely elevated, and hopefully next year we'll do the same thing and just go above and beyond it. So great work to everyone that was involved in that, and that was awesome. And that's it. That's all I have. So the next meeting will be on September 11th, 2019 at 6:30, and this has been adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, congratulations on leading your first meeting.